Sophie's muffled cries cut through the quiet evening, immediately setting my nerves on edge. I paused halfway up the stairs, trying to hear where it was coming from. My daughter's voice, which was usually full of joy, now trembled with fear. It came from Lydia's room. "Never tell this to your father or Lydia's voice. It's cold and threatening. My blood runs cold." What the hell was happening? I dashed up the remaining steps and burst through the door. Sophie's tiny frame shook as she clung to me, burying her tear-stained face against my chest. Lydia stood there. Her face was a mask of irritation and something more, guilt-horn. "What is the matter?" I asked. "I am stroking Sophie's hair." Sophie drew back, her big blue eyes welling with tears. "I saw Mom and Uncle Ron alone. They warned me not to tell you." The world appeared to tilt on its axis. Uncle Ron, my brother. The pieces clicked into place with sickening precision. "Is that true?" I demanded. Lydia was fixed with a steely gaze. Lydia's gaze darted between Sophie and me. "Ethan, do not be ridiculous. Sophie is just confused. She must have misinterpreted. Don't." My voice sounded low. "Dangerous. Don't try to gaslight our daughter." Lydia's face hardened. "You're going to believe a child over your own spouse when the child is my daughter. Absolutely." I knelt down to Sophie's level, my tone softening. "Sweetheart, could you please tell me what you saw?" "Sophie?" Hiccup, wiping her eyes. I arrived home early from Sarah's house. I heard noises in your bedroom. When I looked inside, I noticed Mom and Uncle Ron kissing. They were taking off their clothing. Mom saw me and informed me. I could not tell you. She told you to be angry. Rage surged through me, hot and potent. I stood slowly, my gaze never leaving Lydia's face. "How long?" Lydia crossed her arms in defiance. "Ethan, you are exaggerating this situation. How long?" She sighed and rolled her eyes. "Several months. It means nothing. Ron and I simply connect in ways that you and I no longer do." I laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. "Connect. Is this what you call my brother? Behind my back? Daddy?" Sophie's small voice broke through the tension. "What does this mean?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. "Nothing, sweetie. This is adult stuff. Why don't you go to your room for a while? I need to talk to your mother." Sophie nodded, casting a wary glance at Lydia, and dashed out as soon as the door closed. I rounded on my wife. "You disgust me!" I spit. "You not only betrayed me, but also attempted to silence our daughter, threaten her." Lydia's facade cracked, desperation seeps through. "Ethan, please, we can work it out. This was a mistake, an error." I laughed again. The sound is devoid of humor. "It is a mistake to forget to pick up milk. This is a choice. A series of choices. Every time you meet with him, every lie you've told me, every time you prioritize your selfish desires over our family." "How about our family?" Lydia pleaded. "Think of Sophie. We can seek counseling, work through it. There is no more we." I spoke in a cold, final tone. "You lost the right to discuss our family the moment you decided to sleep with my brother." Lydia's eyes widened. Realization is dawning. "Ethan, no! You can't watch me!" I strode to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. "Pack your shit! Are you going to leave now? You can't simply throw me out!" Lydia shrieked. Her composure was completely shattered. "This is also my house." I whirled at her, my voice a low growl. "When you brought that jerk into our bed, did you forfeit your right to this house? Now pack or I'll do it for you." Lydia stood there, stunned, as I began throwing her clothes into the suitcase. You cannot do this! Where am I supposed to go?" "I do not give a damn," I snarled. "Go see Ron, go to the hotel. I'm fine with sleeping in your car." "But you're not staying here for another minute," as I continued to pack. Lydia's shock turned to anger. "You're going to regret this, Ethan. I will take everything you have, including the house and money." "Sophie." I laughed harshly and mirthlessly. "Good luck with that. Do you really think a judge will side with the cheating wife who attempted to intimidate her own daughter into silence? Pack your belongings and leave before I throw you out myself." Lydia's face was contorted with rage. She lunged forward and slapped me hard in the face. I grabbed her wrist before she could strike again. My grip is firm, but not bruising. "Don't," I warned. My voice is low and dangerous. "You've already crossed enough lines. Do not make things worse for yourself." I released her wrist and she stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. For a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with all those years before, but it disappeared in an instant, replaced by a stranger who had betrayed me in the worst way. "You have 5 minutes." I said. My tone brooked no argument. "Then I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing." Lydia's shoulders sagged with defeat. She moved around the room, gathering necessary items and packing them into the suitcase. I watched her silently, my mind racing with plans for what would happen next. Lydia turned to face me one last time as she zipped up her suitcase. "Can I at least say my goodbyes to Sophie?" "Absolutely not," I said, my voice harsh. "You lost that right when you attempted to use her as a pawn in your sick game. I will explain things to her when she is ready." Lydia's face crumpled, but I had no sympathy. She made her choice. Now she had to deal with the consequences. I followed her downstairs and watched as she struggled with the suitcase. A part of me wanted to help her. Old habits die hard, but I crushed that impulse mercilessly. She did not deserve my help. Not anymore. As we approached the front door, I noticed our neighbor Jake watching from his porch, concerned. I gave him a brief nod, indicating that I would explain later. Lydia paused at the threshold, turning to face me one final time. "Ethan, please do not do this. We can work things out for Sophie's sake. Do not use our daughter as a bargaining chip," I snarled. "You've lost the right to discuss what's best for her. Get out now!" With that, I slammed the door in her face, cutting short whatever pathetic plea she was about to make. I leaned against the door. My heart was racing, adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was finished. My marriage was over. However, as the shock faded, a new emotion emerged: determination. This was not the end. This was just the beginning. Lydia and Ron had no idea what was coming to them. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the upcoming conversation. "Sophie," I called out. "Can you come down here, sweetheart? We need to talk." As I heard her small footsteps on the stairs, I silently vowed that I would do whatever it took to protect her and hold Lydia and Ron accountable for their betrayal, no matter how much it cost me. I hardly slept that night. My mind was filled with rage and plans for retribution. As the first rays of sunlight shone through the curtains, I made a decision. It was time to confront Ron. After dropping Sophie off at school with the assurance that everything would be fine, I drove to Ron's office. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Rage simmers just below the surface. I walked into the sleek, modern building, ignoring the receptionist who attempted to stop me. "Sir, you cannot just—" I ignored her and pushed open the door to Ron's corner office. He looked up, surprised, and quickly became terrified when he saw my expression. "Ethan, what are you?" I cut him off. My voice is low and dangerous. "You only have 1 minute to explain yourself before I beat the living shit out of you." Ron's gaze shifted to the door, but I blocked his escape route. "Look, Ethan, I can explain." "What exactly are you explaining?" I snarled. "How you've been secretly sleeping with my wife. How you helped her intimidate my daughter into silence." Ron's face turned pale. "Sophia informed you, Ethan. It's not as you think." I laughed with a harsh, bitter tone. "Not what I think. Please enlighten me. What possible explanation could you give for betraying your own brother?" Ron stood with his hands raised in a placating gesture. "It's just happened. Lydia and I connected. We did not intend for it to go this far." "Connected." I spit the word like poison. "Is that what you're calling it? You didn't simply betray me, Ron. You betrayed Sophie, our parents and entire family." "I know, and I apologize," Ron said, his voice pleading. "We can work it out, Ethan. As a family, that was the final straw." I lunged forward, grabbing Ron's expensive silk tie. "We are not family." I growled, my face just inches from his. "You lost the right to call yourself my brother the moment you touched my wife." Ron struggled to break free. "Ethan, please consider what you're doing. You could lose everything." I laughed again. The sound was cold and joyless. "Lose everything. Thank you and Lydia I already have, but trust me, little brother, you have not seen anything yet?" I shoved him back, watching with pleasure as he stumbled against his desk. "Consider this your only warning," I said with a deathly calm voice. "Stay away from me. Stay away from Sophie, or you'll regret your birth." I turned to leave. Ron called out, his voice filled with desperation. "Ethan, please wait. This is something we can fix. Just, please give me a chance to explain." I paused at the door and did not bother to turn around. "There is nothing to explain, Ron. You've made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences." I strode out of the office, ignoring Ron's colleagues' shocked expressions as I approached my car. My phone broke. Jake's text revealed what happened last night. "You okay? We need to talk." I hesitated for a moment before responding. "Yeah, meet me at O'Malley's at 20. As I drove to the bar, my thoughts raced with possibilities. Jake had always been a good friend and someone I trusted. Maybe it was time to tell someone else what was going on. O'Malley's was almost empty when I arrived, just a few regulars enjoying their midday beers. Jake was already present. There are 2 whiskeys on the table in front of him. I figured you could use something stronger than beer. He spoke as I sat down. I nodded gratefully and downed half the whiskey in one gulp. The burn in my throat provided a welcome distraction from the pain in my chest. So Jake said, keeping his tone neutral, "Do you want to tell me what is going on?" I took a deep breath and spilled everything. Lydia had an affair with Ron. Sophie catches them. They attempted to silence her. By the time I had finished, Jake's expression was one of barely contained rage. "Those scumbags!" He let out a growl. "Ethan, I sincerely apologize. What can I do to help?" I looked at him, really looked at him. Jake and I had been friends for years, always available when I needed him. Perhaps it was time to trust someone else. I am going to destroy them. I said, my voice is low and intense, not only divorce, not just public humiliation. I want to ruin their lives as they have ruined mine. Jake nodded slowly, a gleam of understanding in his eyes. "You need resources, information, and a team." "Yes," I admitted, "I can't do this alone, but I need people I can trust." "Absolutely." Jake leaned forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. "I may know some former military personnel who are not on the books. They specialize in information gathering." I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't this illegal?" Jake shrugged. "Only if you're caught, and believe me, these guys don't get caught." I paused for a moment, weighing the risks and potential rewards. Eventually, I nodded. "Set it up." "But Jake..." Jake's eyes hardened. "Ethan, you are like a brother to me. He's a better brother than Ron ever was. I am with you all the way." For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I did not feel alone. "Thank you, Jake. I mean it." Jake nodded and pulled out his phone. "I will make some calls. In the meantime, we need to begin gathering evidence. Anything you can learn about Lydia and Ron. Bank statements, emails, and telephone records. Anything that could prove useful." I nodded. My mind is already racing with possibilities. "I'll get to it. And Jake, we have to keep this quiet. The fewer people know, the better." "Agreed," Jake said, having finished his whiskey. "We will meet again in a few days. I'll have more information by then as I walk out of O'Malley's." I felt a sense of purpose that I hadn't had since the nightmare began. Lydia and Ron believed they could destroy my life and get away with it. They had no idea what was coming. The next few days were a blur of activity. I threw myself into gathering every piece of information I could find about Lydia and Ron. Bank statements, credit card bills, phone records, anything that could be useful. Jake had followed through with his contacts. We were meeting tonight to talk about our next steps. I had invited Emily and Peter, Jake's wife and brother, to join us if we were going to do this. We needed a tight-knit team. We could trust implicitly. As I approached Jake and Emily's house, I noticed Peter's car already in the driveway. Good. We were all here. Emily opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a tight hug. "Oh, Ethan," she murmured. "I'm very sorry about everything." I returned the hug. "I am grateful for your support. Thank him. Is everybody here?" She nodded and led me to the living room where Jake and Peter were waiting. The coffee table was covered in laptops, files, and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. "Ethan." Peter gave me a firm handshake. "How are you holding up?" I shrugged and took a seat as expected. "Sophie is struggling, but she's tough. She will get through this." Jake gave me a beer. "So how about you? Do you want to go through with this?" I took a long pull from the bottle and carefully considered my response. Lydia and Ronald. They didn't simply betray me. They threatened my daughter. They treated her as a pawn in their sick game. That is unacceptable to me. Emily leaned forwards, her gaze serious. "Ethan, we are with you. However, you must be aware of the potential risks, what we are planning. It is not exactly legal." I nodded. My jaw had set. I know, but neither was what they did to me or Sophie. Sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire. Peter spoke up, his tone calm and measured. Okay, let's break this down. What are we trying to accomplish here? I took a deep breath and organized my thoughts. Not only do I want to divorce them, but also destroy them. Lydia cut ties with Ron. I want to ruin their lives as they have ruined mine. Jake leaned in, his gaze gleaming. We begin with their social lives, expose the affair, and ensure that everyone in their circles understands what they did. Emily nodded, having already started typing on her laptop. I can handle it. I have connections in their social circles, several well-placed rumors, several anonymous tips. Good, I said, but that's only the beginning. I want to hit them where it really hurts, their careers and finances. Peter raised an eyebrow. This is where things get tricky. We will need solid evidence, something that cannot be traced back to us. I pulled out a flash drive and tossed it on the table. I have everything I could find about their finances, including bank statements and credit card records. There must be something we can use. Jake took up the drive, a slow smile spreading across his face. Ah, there will be. My contacts can dig deeper, find the dirt these two attempted to bury. What about Sophie? Emily asked softly. How does she fit into all of this? When my daughter's name came up, I felt a pang in my chest. She stays completely out of it, so far as she knows. Lydia and I are getting a divorce. This is the end of the story. The others nodded their agreement. Peter leaned forwards. His expression is serious. Ethan, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we start, there is no turning back. I met his gaze. My resolve is hardening. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. They chose to betray me and threaten my daughter. Now they must face the consequences. Jake raised his beer bottle to justice, then to making those bastards pay. We clinked our bottles together. The sound echoed throughout the quiet room. As I looked around at my friends and team, I experienced a surge of gratitude. I wasn't fighting alone. All right, I said, putting down my beer. Let us get to work, Emily. Start spreading the rumors. Ensure that everyone in Lydia and Ron's social circles understands who they truly are. Emily nodded, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Consider it finished. By this time tomorrow, they'll be social outcasts. I turned to face Jake. Can your contacts delve deeper into their financials? I want to know every dirty secret and skeleton in their closets. Jake grinned with a predatory gleam in his eyes. Oh, they will find it, trust me. If there is dirt to be dug up, my crew will find it. Good. I said, Peter, I need you to look into their professional backgrounds. Are there any weaknesses that we can exploit? We can turn against any of our colleagues. Peter nodded, already taking notes. I have some ideas. Leave it to me. As we continued planning late into the night, I felt a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt since the nightmare began. Lydia and Ron believed they could destroy my life and get away with it. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of my phone buzzing constantly. I grabbed it, squinting at the screen. Dozens of missed phone calls, texts, and social media notifications. It had begun. I scrolled through the messages. Friends, colleagues, and even distant acquaintances were shocked and disgusted by Lydia and Ron's betrayal. Emily's plan had worked like a charm. The phone rang again. It was Lydia. I responded, my voice cold. What do you want, Ethan? What the hell did you do? Lydia's voice was shrill, panicked. Everybody knows. How could you? I cut her off. How could I? That's impressive coming from you. I did nothing, Lydia. The truth has a way of emerging. You bastard, she hissed. You have ruined everything. I laughed. The sound is harsh and bitter. No, Lydia. You and Ron did it entirely on your own. I'm just making sure everyone understands what kind of people you are. This is not over, she threatened. I hung up. I'm going to end her rant. My phone immediately vibrated again. Ron. This time I ignored it. A text from Jake appeared. It works. They're on full panic mode. Meet at my place in an hour. I quickly texted back a yes, then went to the shower. As the hot water washed over me, I gave myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Phase 1 was completed. Now, the real destruction can begin. An hour later, I was sitting in Jake's living room, surrounded by laptops and files. Emily was rapidly typing away. Her face was illuminated by the blue glow of her screen. You should see their social media, she said, not looking up. It is a bloodbath. Every post, every photograph. People are ripping them apart. Jake nodded in approval. Good. Allow them to experience what it is like to be betrayed, to have their lives torn apart in public. I leaned in, my voice low and intense. What happens next? We need to keep the pressure up. Peter cleared his throat. I've been looking into their professional backgrounds. Lydia's PR firm has already distanced itself from her. One more push, and she'll be out on her ass. Do it. I spoke without hesitation. Ensure that every client and contact understands the type of person they are dealing with. Emily glanced up from her screen. What about Ron? His legal firm is more resilient. They might attempt to weather the storm. I felt a cold smile spread across my lips. Then we'll just have to worsen the storm. Jake, what have your contacts discovered? Jake took out a thick file. His eyes gleamed. Oh, you're going to love it. It appears that our dear brother Ron has been playing fast and loose with client funds, nothing significant enough to be noticed until now. I raised an eyebrow. Can we prove it? Jake nodded. Every transaction and every cooked book. It is all here. Ron's career ended with an anonymous tip to the Bar Association. I sat back and considered our options. Do it, but not now. Let them stew for a bit. See if they attempt to fight back. As if on cue, my phone broke. Lydia sent another text. Please, Ethan, we need to talk. This has gone too far. I showed the others and observed their reactions. Emily's expression hardened. Do not fall for it, Ethan. It is a trap. I understand, I said with a cold voice. But perhaps it's time for some face-to-face confrontation. Let them know exactly what they're up against. Jake leaned forwards. His expression was one of concern. They might do something desperate. I nodded. My mind was made up. Set it up. We are on neutral ground, somewhere public. I want witnesses for whatever happens. As the others began making plans, I experienced a familiar surge of rage and determination. Lydia and Ron believed they could manipulate and play on my emotions. They were about to discover how wrong they were. An hour later, I was sitting in a busy cafe. My back is to the wall. Clear view of the entrance. I saw them before they noticed me. Lydia and Ron appeared haggard and desperate. They approached my table. I maintained an impassive expression. Sit, I replied coldly. Lydia slid into the seat across from mine. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Ron hesitated before taking the chair next to her. I noticed how they naturally leaned away from one another. Ethan, there's already trouble in paradise. Lydia spoke, her voice trembling. Please, we need to discuss this. What are you doing? It is destroying us. I raised an eyebrow. And what you did not destroy me, did not threaten Sophie's life. Ron spoke up, his tone low and urgent. Brother, please, we made an error, a terrible mistake. But this vendetta, it has gone too far. I laughed. The sound is harsh and bitter. Too far. You haven't seen anything yet. This is only the beginning. Lydia reached across the table and attempted to take my hand. I drew back as if burned. Ethan, think of Sophie. What will happen to her, seeing her parents fighting like this? My eyes flashed with rage. Do not use Sophie as a shield. You lost that right when you attempted to silence her and make her complicit in your betrayal. Ron leaned forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. What do you want, Ethan? Money. We can make it right. Please tell us what it will take to put an end to this. I stared at him, my voice cold. What I want, dear brother, is for you both to suffer and lose everything like I have. And trust me, by the time I'm finished, you'll wish I had simply taken your money. Lydia's face wrinkled. Ethan, please, we apologize. We never intended. I cut her off. Sorry. You're not apologizing for what you did. You're sorry you were caught. Sorry, your perfect little lives are falling apart. So get used to it, because this is only the beginning. I stood there looking down at them with contempt. Enjoy the remainder of your lives while you still can. As I walked away, I heard Lydia sob. Ron's voice attempting to console her faded as I pushed through the cafe door outside. I took a deep breath to steady myself. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jake's number. It's finished, I said when he responded. They're desperate, scrambling. It's time to move on to phase 2, Jake said. You've got it? I will make the calls. By this time tomorrow, Ron's career will be in ruins. I hung up with a cold, satisfied feeling in my chest. Lydia and Ron believed they had seen the worst of it. They had no idea what would happen next. The destruction had only just started. The next morning, I heard my phone ring. It was Jake. His voice was urgent and excited. "Ethan, turn on the news now." I fumbled for the remote and turned on the television. The headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen caused my heart to race. Ronald Winters, a prominent lawyer, is accused of embezzlement. In a shocking turn of events, the anchor's voice filled the entire room. Ronald Winters, a partner at the prestigious law firm Winters and Associates, is accused of embezzling client funds. An anonymous tip to the Bar Association prompted an investigation that revealed years of financial misconduct. I turned the television to mute. A cold smile spread across my face. "Well done, Jake. How is Ron taking it?" Jake laughed darkly, satisfied. "Oh, you should see him. He's on full panic mode. The firm has already distanced itself, citing an internal investigation. He will be out on his ass by the end of the day." I nodded, even though Jake could not see me. "Good. Lydia, too. That's the best part," Jake exclaimed, his voice gleeful. "It turns out that our dear sister-in-law has been living a lavish lifestyle on Ron's dime. There are records of transfers from his account to hers, expensive gifts and luxury vacations. She's been implicated in the entire mess." I experienced a surge of savage satisfaction. "Perfect. Let us turn up the heat." Emily is still working her magic on social media. Oh, yes. Jake confirmed that Lydia and Ron will be social pariahs by the end of her work. They are untouchable. I hung up. My mind is racing with possibilities. It was time to face Lydia again, to witness her world crumble in person. An hour later, I was standing outside of our old house. This is my house now. Lydia's car was parked in the driveway, just as I expected. I knocked on the door, hard and persistently. Lydia opened it. Her eyes were red and puffy. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Ethan, please stop this. It has gone too far." I pushed past her and entered the house. "Too far. Lydia, this is only the beginning. How does it feel to see your perfect little world fall apart?" She followed me to the living room. Her voice sounded desperate. "Ethan, I understand we hurt you, but this is destroying us. Think of Sophie. What will happen to her? My entire world revolves around her." My eyes blazed. "Don't bring Sophie into this. You lost that right when you attempted to use her as a pawn in your sick game." Lydia collapsed on the couch, head in her hands. "Ethan, what do you want from us? Please tell me, we will do anything." I laughed. The sound is harsh and bitter. "I want you and Ron to suffer, dear wife, to lose everything as I have, and trust me, we are just getting started." Lydia looked up, her eyes widening with fear. "What do you mean?" I smiled coldly. "Do you think the embezzlement charges are bad? Please wait. By the end of this, you and Ron will have nothing to show for it. No job, no friends, and no future. You wish I had just taken everything during the divorce." "You can't do it," Lydia whispered, her voice trembling. "It is not legal." I leaned in closer, my voice low and dangerous. "And what you did was betray me, threatening our daughter. You chose this path, Lydia. Now you can see where it leads." Lydia's phone broke as if on cue. She picked it up. Her face paled as she read the message. "No," she whispered. No, what is it?" I inquired, already knowing the response. Lydia looked up at me, her eyes full of despair. "My firm, they are letting me go, effective immediately, something about moral turpitude and harm to the company's reputation." I nodded. Satisfaction is coursing through me. "I imagine your minor scandal has made you quite a liability." "Tell me, Lydia, how does it feel to have lost everything?" She lunged at me and clawed at my shirt. "You bastard! You have ruined everything!" I grabbed her wrists easily and held her at arm's length. "No, Lydia, you and Ron did everything on your own. I'm simply making sure you face the consequences." I let her go, watching her crumple to the floor as I turned to leave. I paused at the doorway. "Oh, Lydia, I would start packing if I were you. This home will be on the market by the end of the week." Her sobs followed me out of the door, a symphony of despair that filled me with joy as I got into my car. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jake's number. "It's finished." When he responded, I told him Lydia was out of work, and judging from her reaction, Ron is not far behind. "It's time for Phase 3. Jake's voice was enthusiastic. "The financial takedown. I have everything ready. One more push and their accounts will be depleted, their credit ruined. They will be living in cardboard boxes by the end of the month." I nodded. A cold smile spread across my face. Do it. And Jake. Make it hurt. Lydia and Ron believed they could destroy my life and get away with it. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The game hadn't ended yet. Definitely not. The next few days were a blur of activity. Jake and his team worked tirelessly, digging up every scrap of information they could find about Lydia and Ron. Emily continued her social media assault, making sure that every friend, colleague, and acquaintance was aware of the type of people they were dealing with. I was in Jake's living room, surrounded by laptops and files, when my phone rang with an unknown number. I responded cautiously. "Mr. Winters," a gruff voice came from the speaker. "This is David Lynch. I'm a private investigator hired by your wife and brother. They are searching for dirt on you." I felt a cold smile spread across my lips. "Is that true, Mr. Lynch? And why are you telling me that?" There was a pause at the other end of the line. Let's just say I dislike being used as a pawn in someone else's game. Your wife and brother. They aren't good people, are they? I laughed. The sound was harsh and bitter. "No, Mr. Lynch, they are not, but I am curious. What made you contact me?" Lynch's voice lowered. "I've been in this business for a long time, Mr. Winters. I can smell a setup from a mile away. They are trying to frame you for something huge." I sat up straighter. My mind raced. "Go on. They've been planting evidence," Lynch added. "Fake financial records and doctored emails. They're attempting to make you look like the one who embezzled the money, not your brother." I experienced a surge of rage, followed by a cold determination. "Thank you for the information, Mr. Lynch. I appreciate your candor." Lynch replied, "Don't mention it. Just take care, Mr. Winters. These people are desperate. There's no telling what they'll do." As I hung up, I looked at Jake, who had been listening intently. "Do you hear that?" Jake nodded, his eyes glinting. "Oh, yes. Lydia and Ron appear to be trying to play hardball. Too bad for them. We are always one step ahead." I stood pacing the room, my mind racing with possibilities. We have to turn this around on them, use their own traps against them. Emily glanced up from her laptop. "I might have an idea, if they are planting false evidence. Why don't we plant some of our own while giving the appearance that they are doing the framing?" A slow smile appeared on my face. "Emily, you are a genius." "Jake, can your contacts help make this happen?" Jake was already using his phone. "Consider it finished. Lydia and Ron will be caught in the act of framing you by this time tomorrow. It will be the last nail in their coffin." I nodded. Satisfaction flows through me. Good. While we're at it, let's ensure that the authorities receive an anonymous tip about their little scheme. I want them to feel the full force of the law bearing down on them. Lydia and Ron believed they could outmaneuver me and turn the tables in their favor. They were about to discover how severely they had underestimated me. The next day, Detective Sarah Caldwell called me. Her voice was clear and professional. "I need Mr. Winters to come down to the station. There has been a development in your case." I arrived at the police station. My face is a mask of concerned innocence. Detective Caldwell met me in the lobby, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Winters," she said, leading me to an interview room, "we've uncovered some disturbing evidence. It appears your wife and brother were attempting to frame you for the embezzlement charges." I feigned surprise. "What? That's unbelievable. How did you find out?" Caldwell's eyes narrowed slightly. "An anonymous tip led us to some incriminating information, emails and financial records. All of this points to an elaborate scheme to blame you for the embezzlement." I shook my head, portraying the shocked, betrayed husband. "I cannot believe they would do this. After everything." Caldwell leaned forwards. "Mr. Winters, do you have any knowledge of this scheme?" I met her gaze steadily. "Absolutely not." "Detective, I knew my wife and brother had betrayed me, but this is beyond what I could have imagined." She nodded, appearing satisfied. "We have brought them in for questioning. Given the evidence we've uncovered, they face serious charges of attempted fraud and obstruction of justice, in addition to the original embezzlement charges." I let out a shaky breath. "What will happen now?" "Now?" Caldwell said this while standing up. "We build our case. Mr. Winters, you're free to go, but don't leave town. We may have additional questions for you as the investigation progresses." As I left the station, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Lydia and Ron had played right into my hands. Their desperate attempt to turn the tables had only confirmed their fate. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jake's number. "It's finished," I said when he responded. They accepted the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Jake laughed darkly, satisfied. "Perfect. How does it feel knowing they're going down for attempting to frame you?" I smiled coldly and viciously. "It feels like justice, Jake. Pure, sweet justice. Lydia and Ron believed they could destroy my life and get away with it. They were about to learn the true definition of consequences. The game was almost over, and I'd won." The days following Lydia and Ron's arrest were a blur. I focused on Sophie, attempting to protect her from the worst of the consequences, but the kids at school talked, and I could see how it was affecting her. We were eating breakfast when the doorbell rang. I opened it and saw Detective Sarah Caldwell standing there. "Mr. Winters," she said, her voice tight, "we need to talk." I ushered her inside. My mind raced. Had they discovered my role in framing Lydia and Ron? But Caldwell's next words took the wind out of me. "We discovered some disturbing information," she explained, sitting at the kitchen table. "It appears that your brother Ron was involved in much more than just embezzlement." I leaned forwards, genuinely curious now. "What do you mean?" Caldwell's eyes met mine. "Corporate espionage. Ron was using Lydia to smuggle valuable information from your company. We believe he intended to not only ruin your career but also steal your entire business." The world appeared to tilt on its axis. I gripped the table's edge. My knuckles are turning white. That is impossible." "How?" Lydia Caldwell explained. Her voice softened slightly. "She had access to your home office and personal files. We discovered evidence that she had been photographing and sending documents to Ron for months. I felt a surge of rage so strong that I nearly choked. I snarled at the bastards. It was not enough to betray me personally. They had to go after my livelihood as well." Caldwell nodded, her face sympathetic. "I apologize, Mr. Winters. I understand how shocking this must be." I laughed, the sound harsh and bitter, a surprise. "That's the biggest understatement of the century, Detective." She leaned forward, her voice lowered. "Mr. Winters, Ethan, I have to ask if you had any suspicions about this. Do you have any idea what they were planning?" I met her gaze steadily. "Years of boardroom negotiations have helped me. No clue, Detective. I knew they had betrayed me, but this is beyond what I could have imagined." Caldwell nodded, appearing satisfied. "We will need your assistance as we build our case. Ron and Lydia face serious charges: industrial espionage, conspiracy. They are looking at significant prison time." I nodded, my mind already racing with ideas. "Of course. Detective, whatever you need." Caldwell left and I sank back into my chair. My head is spinning. Ron's betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. The rage I felt before was nothing compared to the inferno that was burning in my chest right now. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jake's number. "Bring everyone together," I said when he responded. "We need to talk now." An hour later, I was pacing Jake's living room while the others watched me with concern. Corporate espionage. I spit, my voice shaking with rage. They weren't just out to ruin me personally, they were targeting my entire business. Emily gasped, bringing her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Ethan, that is horrible." Jake's eyes narrowed. "What are your thoughts, Ethan? What are our next steps?" I stopped pacing, turning to face them. "We completely destroy them. No mercy, no quarters. I want to bury Ron and Lydia so deeply that they never see the light of day again." Peter leaned forwards. His expression is serious. "Ethan, are you certain? This is an entirely new level of retaliation. There is no going back from this." I laughed coldly and mirthlessly. "Come back, Peter. There was no turning back once they decided to betray me, to use my daughter as a pawn in their sick scheme. Now it's war." Jake nodded. "I am with you, Ethan, whatever it takes." Emily and Peter exchanged a look before nodding in agreement. "We're in," Emily announced. "What is the plan?" I sat, leaning forward intently. "We collect every scrap of evidence we can find. Emails, financial records, and call logs. I want irrefutable evidence of their conspiracy." Jake was already using his laptop. "My contacts can help us gain access to Ron's work computer. If there is evidence, we will find it." "Good." I nodded. "Emily, I need you to keep working your social media magic. I want everyone in our industry to understand exactly who Ron and Lydia are." Emily nodded, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Consider it finished. By the time I am finished, they will not be able to get a job flipping hamburgers. I turned to Peter. I need you to reach out to our media contacts. Once we have the evidence, I want to blow this story wide open. Front page news and primetime coverage. I want Ron and Lydia's faces plastered everywhere as corporate traitors. Peter took out his phone. I'll start calling. We will ensure that this story is not buried or spun. As the others sprung into action, I felt a cold determination wash over me. Ron and Lydia tried to take everything from me, including my marriage, daughter, and business. They were about to learn the true meaning of loss. The final act of this drama was about to begin, and I planned to deliver a performance they'd never forget. The next few days were filled with non-stop activity. Jake and his team worked tirelessly to sift through Ron's digital life. Emily's social media campaign was in full swing, with public opinion firmly against Ron and Lydia. Peter had scheduled interviews with major news outlets, ready to break the story wide open. My phone rang while I was in my home office reviewing the mountain of evidence we'd gathered. It was Jake. "Ethan," he said, his voice tight with excitement. "We received it. Emails and financial records, conversations are recorded, it is all here. Ron and Lydia's entire conspiracy is outlined in black and white." I experienced a surge of savage satisfaction. "Excellent work, Jake. Send everything to Peter. It is time to go public." As I hung up, I heard a small voice in the doorway. "Dad, what is going on?" I turned to see Sophie standing there, her eyes wide with concern. I forced a smile, attempting to keep my voice light. "There's nothing to worry about, sweetheart. Just some work-related stuff." Sophie furrowed her brow. "Is it about Mom and Uncle Ron? Are they in trouble?" I sighed and kneeled down to her level. "Sophie, honey, your mother and Uncle Ron did some extremely bad things. They will have to face the consequences of their actions. Are they going to prison?" Sophie's voice quivered slightly. I nodded, heartbroken for her. "Probably yes. But don't worry about it. I promise to always be here for you no matter what." Sophie threw her arms around me and buried her face in my shoulder. I gripped her tightly, my determination hardening everything I did. All of this was for her, to protect her, to ensure her future. As Sophie returned to her room, I returned to my desk and opened up the news on my laptop. It was time. The news broke like a tsunami. Every major news outlet ran with it. The headline screams betrayal and corporate espionage. Ron and Lydia's faces appeared everywhere. Their crimes were laid bare for all to see. My phone constantly buzzed. Colleagues, friends, and even a competitor expressed shock and offered support. I did an excellent job playing my part, the betrayed husband and businessman. Be gracious in the face of such treachery. Late that night, as the media frenzy was at its peak, I received a call from an unknown number. I responded cautiously. "Ethan?" Lydia's voice was small and broken. "Please, we need to talk." I felt a rush of cold fury. "There is nothing to talk about, Lydia. You made your choice. Now you have to deal with the consequences. Ethan, please," she begged. "You do not understand, Ron. He manipulated me. He threatened to hurt me if I didn't help him. He had hurt Sophie." I laughed harshly and mirthlessly. "Lydia, save your lies. We both understand the truth. You chose this path. You have betrayed me, betrayed our daughter. And for what? Money? Power?" There was a pause. Then Lydia's voice returned. "It's harder now, you arrogant bastard. Do you think you have won? This is not over, Ethan. Will I cut her off? It's over, Lydia. It ended the moment you decided to betray me. Enjoy your new life. I've heard that prison can be quite educational." I hung up. Lydia and Ron had played their last card and lost. Now was the time to put an end to this. The next morning, I got a call from Detective Caldwell. "Mr. Winters, we have just received word. Lydia Winter was apprehended at the airport while trying to flee the country." I feigned surprise. "What? That is unbelievable. I can't believe she even tried to run." Caldwell's voice was sympathetic. "I apologize, Mr. Winters. I understand how difficult this must be for you, but rest assured that Lydia and Ron will face the full consequences of their actions." As I hung up, I gave myself a small smile. The last pieces were falling into place. Lydia and Ron's desperate attempt to flee had only secured their fate. I called Jake's number. "It's finished," I said when he responded. Lydia attempted to run. They stopped her at the airport. Jake laughed darkly, satisfied. "Perfect. This is the final nail in their coffin. Ethan, how does it feel knowing it's finally over? I paused. Given that it feels right, Jake. It feels like justice has finally been served. As I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Lydia and Ron had attempted to destroy me, taking everything I valued. Instead, they destroyed themselves. The months following Ron and Lydia's arrest were a blur of legal proceedings and media coverage. Throughout it all, I focused on Sophie, doing everything I could to protect her from the worst of the fallout. As the dust settled, I made my decision. It was time for a fresh start. Sophie, I mentioned one evening over dinner, how do you feel about moving? Starting somewhere new? Sophie looked up from her plate, her eyes widening. Move. But what about schooling? My friends? I reached across the table and took her tiny hand in mine. I understand that this is a significant change, but I believe it will be beneficial to both of us. An opportunity to start over, get away from all the bad memories. Sophie was quiet for a moment before nodding slowly. Okay, Dad, if you think it is best. I smiled, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders. Honey, I do. And hey, maybe we can get the dog you've always wanted in our new home. Sophie's face lit up at this, and for the first time in months, I noticed a genuine smile on her face. The following few weeks were a blur of activity. House hunting, packing, saying our goodbyes. Jake, Emily, and Peter were invaluable, assisting with everything from finding a new school for Sophie to settling into our new home. As we stood in front of our new home, boxes were piled around us. I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't had in a long time. Well, Jake said, clapping my shoulder, Ethan, this is quite a place. A fresh start, just as you want it. I nodded, surveying the new home. It's perfect. Sophie is already choosing colors for her room. Emily approached with a stack of papers in hand. I have the details on the new business venture you were interested in. Looks promising. I took the papers and flipped through them. Thank you, Emily. With you and Peter on board, I believe we can make it work. Peter joined us with his arm around his wife. We are with you all the way, Ethan. After everything we've gone through, it will be beneficial to focus on something positive. As we stood there, planning our new future, I heard a voice calling from next door. Hello there! You must be the new neighbor! I turned to see a woman approaching her, smiling warmly and genuine. I am Hannah Miller, she said, holding out her hand. Welcome to the neighborhood. I shook her hand and felt an unexpected spark. Ethan Winter, and this is Sophie, my daughter. Sophie peered out from behind me, giving Hannah a shy wave. Hannah smiled wider. It's nice to meet you both. If you need any assistance settling in, please do not hesitate to ask. As Hannah spoke with us, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of possibilities. Perhaps there was room in our new lives for more than just business and revenge. Weeks became months. The new business thrived, and Jake and Peter proved to be invaluable partners. Sophie settled into her new school, making friends and gradually recovering from the traumas of the previous year, and Hannah. Hannah became a constant presence in our lives, beginning as a friendly neighbor, progressing to a close friend, and eventually to something more. Hannah turned to me one evening while we were sitting on the back porch, watching Sophie play with her new dog. Ethan? She spoke softly. I know you've been through a lot, and I understand if you're not ready, but I want you to know I'm here for both of you. I looked at her intently. In her eyes, I saw warmth, understanding, and something that resembled love. Hannah, I said, taking her hand, you've become an extremely important part of our lives. Sophie adores you and me. I think I am falling in love with you. Hannah's eyes filled up with tears. Oh, Ethan, I love you too, both of you. Sophie giggled as we kissed. I looked up and saw her beaming at us. The dog wags its tail beside her. In that moment, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. We had weathered the storm, grown stronger, and discovered a new path forward. The next day, I had an unexpected visitor in the office. Detective Caldwell stood in the doorway, a faint smile on her lips. Mr. Winters, she explained, I hope I am not interrupting. I motioned for her to enter. Not at all. Detective, what can I do for you? Caldwell sat down, her expression becoming serious. I wanted to give you an update personally. The case against Ron and Lydia is conclusive. They are looking at significant prison time. I nodded, satisfied. Thank you for informing me. Caldwell leaned forwards. There is more. Mr. Winters, the investigator, looked into Ron's activities. It exposed a much larger network of corporate crime. Your assistance was invaluable in breaking the case. Wide open. I raised an eyebrow. Genuinely surprised. I'm glad I could help. Detective Caldwell stood and extended her hand. We could use someone with your expertise, Mr. Winters. If you ever want to consult on similar cases, the door is open. As she left, I sat back in my chair thinking about her offer. As Hannah, Sophie, and I sat around the dinner table, it occurred to me that I could use my experiences to help others and prevent them from going through what I had that evening. I passed on Detective Caldwell's offer. Sophie's eyes widened like a superhero father fighting bad guys. I laughed and ruffled her hair. Not quite sweetheart, but perhaps. Perhaps an opportunity to do some good. Hannah squeezed my hand. I think it's a fantastic idea, Ethan. If anyone can help people avoid such pain, it's you. As I looked around the table at my new family, I had a sense of purpose. I hadn't had this experience in a long time. The previous year had been a crucible for discarding the old and creating something new and stronger. Lydia and Ron had attempted to destroy me, taking everything I valued. Instead, they had put me on the path to a better life than I could have imagined. The game was truly over, and by winning, I discovered something far more valuable than vengeance. A new beginning infused with love, purpose, and hope. Here is the next story. 5 months ago, while sitting in the kitchen with my 20-year-old daughter Amanda and my 18-year-old son Brian, discussing my husband Henry, Amanda exclaimed, "Mom, why do you always complain about Dad? You sound like a spoiled teen. He gives you everything, but it is never enough. What else do you want?" Feeling defensive, I responded, "I want some excitement. He's too easygoing and never defends himself. I need him to be more assertive and express his anger on occasion." Brian, who appeared uncomfortable, interrupted, "Really? Mom? Dad has gotten angry with me before, and it was not pleasant. I wouldn't want to go through that again." He shivered at the memory. I then explained my plan to him. I will push him until he loses patience and becomes angry with me. When he calms down, I'll make amends and show him how much I care. But I need your help. Amanda appeared skeptical. "That is not an appealing idea to me. If you love Dad, you should not have put him through that." "What do you need from us?" Brian objected strongly. "No way, Mom. I pushed Dad too hard once, and it took a long time to regain his trust. It won't work. Dad does not give warnings. He just snapped. Please do not do this." I ignored his concerns and continued explaining my plan. Then I asked Amanda, "What do you think?" I wanted to push him too hard, but I needed him to stand up to me. Amanda reluctantly agrees. "I do not like it. Like Brian, I'm afraid it will drive us apart. I'll help to some extent, but if things go as Brian predicted, I'll support Dad instead." I turned to face Brian. "And you?" "No," he said firmly. "If I see Dad suffering, I will tell him everything." The next morning, I began by shouting, "Henry, where is my coffee? I told you that I wanted coffee." Henry, startled, emerged from the kitchen with a cup in hand. "What's taking you so long?" I snapped. "Freshly made coffee takes time," Henry explained, trailing off. My complaints persisted throughout our vacation. Brian attempted to speak with his father, but Henry calmly stated that it was between him and me, and he would resolve it. As we drove south along the highway, the tension was thick. My actions had almost pushed Henry to his breaking point. He concentrated on driving, preparing to confront me at our destination. I sensed he was about to snap and remained silent. After a 3-hour drive, we set up camp quietly, ate lunch without speaking, and Henry went for a walk to cool down. He returned 3 hours later looking refreshed and found me drinking with some other campers. "Darling, should we go to dinner?" he asked. "Can't you see that I'm having fun?" "Back off," I responded, laughing with the group. Henry's face turned pale as he noticed my hand on another man, his thigh. He muttered what you wanted and walked away, determined. Henry took out as much money as he could, opened a new bank account and called his boss to explain the situation and arrange for his pay to be transferred to the new account. His boss, understanding the situation, granted him an extended vacation. At 1 a.m., I stumbled back to our campsite, clearly intoxicated and smelling of alcohol. "Henry, come here, I want you," I mumbled. Henry replied through clenched teeth. "No way, who knows what was in there tonight? Forget it." I collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, and passed out, oblivious to his anger. The next morning, I awoke with nausea and a pounding headache. I called out for Henry, but received no response. Crawling outside, I discovered him enjoying his breakfast in the sunlight. He smirked and asked, "Are you not feeling well?" I tried to talk, but he cut me off. "Shut up and listen. Here are the car papers, the key, and the RV paperwork." "Why?" I muttered, barely keeping it together. Henry, nearly shouting, said, "Shut your mouth while I speak. The bank and credit cards are yours. I'm leaving." Panicked, I asked, "When are you coming back?" "We need to talk," Henry said coldly. "The question is, am I returning? And the answer is no. This is our final goodbye." He picked up his backpack and I cried out. No, this was not supposed to happen. I felt nauseous again. Henry showed no compassion and waited. Finally, I whispered, "I love you. I simply wanted you to be more assertive." He looked at me in disbelief. "Well, you got what you wanted and I am furious. Check the sheets while I'm away. They were stained, just like when we married. You smelled like a bar last night. I wanted to discuss our marriage, but your actions made my decision easy. Get tested for STDs. His final words struck me hard. "Goodbye," he said before leaving. I wept and collapsed on the bed, overcome with emotion. Henry walked to the nearby town thinking that leaving would be easier than expected. By evening, he'd found a boarding house in Hillsborough. Alone in his room, he realized that his marriage was truly over. He could deal with my complaints, but not my betrayal. Meanwhile, I awoke feeling slightly better, but still nauseous. I stepped in dried vomit and, breathing through my mouth, gathered my toiletries for a shower while the hot water ran. She attempted to recall the events of the previous night, but her memories were hazy. One thing was certain. Her marriage was on the verge of collapse. Henry had always been forgiving, but the recent events, including her affair, had left him feeling overwhelmed. She sobbed in the shower, overcome with her mistakes. Meanwhile, Henry sat in his temporary room, thinking about his situation. He needed to end his marriage and find another place to live. He called his boss, who assured him that they had found appropriate accommodations. In the meantime, he started looking for an apartment. Despite her shower, Ingrid returned to the RV, which smelled stale. She began cleaning, avoiding all contact with her children. After some effort, she sat outside, fighting the urge to have coffee and cookies. The memories of the previous day overwhelmed her. Amanda called. "Mom, why aren't you answering your phone? I can't reach Dad. What is happening? We fought." Ingrid admitted that he is very upset this time. "I'm not even sure where he is." He threw my car keys, papers, and bank cards at me before storming off with his backpack. Amanda's tone is stern. "What have you done? You know how Dad reacts when he is pushed too far. Mom, you are in serious trouble." "I understand," Ingrid said, her voice cracking. "I don't think he will ever return. He is unable to forgive certain events. I'm just hoping for a peaceful divorce." "Divorce? What did you do to make things irreparable?" Amanda inquired, shocked. Ingrid collected herself and explained everything, including Henry's cold departure and her own harsh words. Amanda gasped. "Mom, you pushed him too far to elicit a reaction. I'll try to contact Dad and speak with him, but I'm not getting involved. You brought this upon yourself. You need to inform Brian. He will be furious. I am not your go-between. You have 2 weeks to sort this out and return home. I'm not coming to help." Amanda hung up and immediately tried to call her father. The line was busy. She sighed, relieved that he hadn't simply vanished. After 10 minutes, she tried again. "Hello, Annie, how are you?" Henry's voice sounded strained and tired. "Dad, you left." "Mom, what will happen to us? Are we still a family?" Amanda inquired, her voice trembling. Henry exhaled. "Yes. I left her. Has she told you everything?" "Probably not," Amanda responded. "Mom basically abandoned you several months ago. Yesterday, she embarrassed you in front of her friends. I understand why you departed. My employer helped me find an apartment and a good lawyer. I'm going to rent a truck and move out. I'll give you my new address shortly." Amanda was chilled by her father's anger in his voice. "I understand, Dad. One final question. Who will explain everything to Brian?" Henry paused. "When you talk to him, simply say we split up. Don't tell him the details. It will crush him. I told your mom that she needed to explain it to both of you." They hung up, and Amanda quietly cried, feeling the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Henry was determined to follow through. He was capable of handling difficult situations, but cheating was unacceptable. He remembered a previous relationship in which he had been cheated on and vowed never to tolerate it again. He packed his belongings and headed for the bus station. The following day, Henry returned to their house, which now felt empty and meaningless. He had an hour-long meeting scheduled with CEO Gerard Dirksen and his lawyer. He felt prepared after a sleepless night of packing essentials and family heirlooms. He went to his office, assuming that Ingrid would not be home that morning. Upon arrival, he was directed to the CEO's office, where he was greeted by his boss. "Harry, take your seat. Coffee is on its way." "Did you have any sleep?" Gerard inquired, concerned. Harry shakes his head. Gerard proceeded. "Harry, meet Miss Ella Hervey. She will handle your divorce case." "You still want to proceed, correct?" Harry replied, trembling slightly. "Yes, as soon as possible. However, I need to rest first." Gerard nodded, understandingly. "Just wanted you to meet her. You can contact her later." They exchanged numbers and departed. Gerard then said, "Let's skip the formalities. Call me Gerard. I've been through it myself and want to help. We have two choices for housing, one in the city and one in the suburbs, both convenient to public transportation. Harry chose the suburban home. Gerard is relieved. This is a good choice. Here is the key and the address. The rent is $750 per month, deducted from your paycheck. Harold and his truck are ready to assist you with your move." "Thank you, Gerard," Harry said. "I am grateful for your support." "You were welcome. However, Don, you should not return to work until you have spoken with Miss Hervey and resolved the situation. If you require anything, please ask," Gerard added. Harry left to meet Harold. They drove to their new apartment, a third-floor unit in a 5-story building with no elevator. It had a living room, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a half-bath, and a large balcony that overlooked a park. It was sparsely furnished, with only the essentials. Harry said, "I didn't need much from the old house. Let's go." 2 hours later, the truck left Henry's former home. He had only taken the essentials, such as bedding and personal items. He left a note for Ingrid, saying she would hear from his lawyer shortly. Ingrid was furious. I was left stranded at the campsite with my car and RV. She looked for a bus stop, realizing she was stuck without a driver's license. She missed the last bus and had to wait until the morning. When she couldn't find her drinking companions, the camp director informed her that they had left. Amanda and Brian were not answering her calls. She returned to the RV in despair. The following morning, Ingrid walked to catch the 7 a.m. She attempted to take the bus, but was stopped by the campground manager. It was a locals-only bus, so she had to wait for the next one an hour later. She thanked the manager and kept walking. When Ingrid finally arrived at their street, she held out hope that Henry had forgiven her. She entered the house and called out Henry, but was met with silence. The antique clock was missing, as were all of Henry's personal belongings. She sank into a chair, realizing he was gone for good. She had hoped for confrontation and reconciliation, but instead found emptiness. Henry had frequently told Amanda and Brian that what was worse was someone being angry with you or acting as if you didn't exist. Even if they are angry, they still care. But if they ignore you, everything is over. Ingrid knew this all too well, recalling a time when Henry discovered Brian purchasing suspicious items for a party. Instead of punishing him, Henry had stated, "If you want to ruin your life, that is your choice." I am finished. Now she realized Henry was doing the same thing to her. Instead of being angry, he was cutting her off, and she knew it was her fault. Ingrid walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and quickly closed it. Remembering that alcohol had played a significant role in their problems, she tore open an envelope from Henry. The note said, "Ingrid, I've had enough humiliation. This marriage is over. I've hired an attorney. You should do the same." Ingrid screamed, frustrated. He did not even sign it. She threw a teapot and a cup against the wall, shattering both. Almost a year later, Henry had established a routine. Sleep, work, eat, repeat. One day, he got divorce papers in the mail. Ingrid tried every possible way to contact Henry, but he completely ignored her. Financially, the split was straightforward because their incomes and savings were comparable, and the house, now mortgage-free, was worth more than $500,000. Henry's frugal lifestyle and long work hours had resulted in significant bonuses, prompting him to consider new investment options. Henry decided he wanted a house with a garden area for his motorcycle, a library, a high-end stereo system, a large kitchen, and 3 bedrooms. He looked for a real estate agent online and through work contacts before settling on one he liked. He celebrated by purchasing a ticket to see Brahms' German Requiem. I felt it was an appropriate choice for the situation. After the concert, he went to a nearby pub, still listening to the music. He was sipping a Dutch Genever when a voice called out, "Henry! Henry Vander, is this you?" A tall woman approached him. "I am sorry, miss. Do I know you?" he asked nicely. She laughed. "I am Eve Gardner. We attended school together. I had a crush on you back then, but I was too shy to speak to you." Harry tried but couldn't remember. He smiled and told me to remember a beautiful woman like you. However, nothing comes to mind. Can I make it up to you with a drink? Eve responded, "I actually have a date, but could I get your number for another time?" Just then, a man stood behind her, glaring. "Baby, this is our date. You're going to have a great time with a real man." Harry quickly wrote his phone number on a piece of paper and gave it to Eve. The man demanded, "Give me that! You're my girlfriend, and I don't want you to be with another guy." Eve shot back, "You've been drinking. I'm not your girlfriend. This was our first and final date. I'm calling an Uber. You are not fit to drive, and I am not going anywhere with you." The man growled, "I will show you." He raised his hand as if to slap Eve. Harry responded quickly, kneeing him hard in the solar plexus. The man gasped and stumbled. Harry held him up, saying, "Be calm, or I will flatten you. Pay for the lady's drinks and leave quietly. I'll call her an Uber, not if we have an agreement." The man nodded, paid the bill, and then left without saying anything else. Harry summoned an Uber for Eve, who stared in amazement. "That's what I remember from school," she explained. "Despite your quiet demeanor, you always helped others. How did you deal with that guy?" "He was much bigger than you," Harry replied. "I've been doing Krav Maga since I was 7. It promotes anger management, confidence, and self-control." The Uber arrived, and Harry paid the driver, bidding evening. "Good night." The following day, Henry received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Harry. Vander. How can I help you?" "Good afternoon." "Harry, it's Eve. Do you have plans for tomorrow?" Henry replied, "I'm looking at houses with a real estate agent." "Oh." Eve sounded disappointed. Henry quickly added, "I'd appreciate your help. Women possess a practical eye. Could you join me?" Eve readily agreed. "Yes, I would love to." "Are you sure what you're looking for?" Harry suggested. "Let's discuss it over dinner. You can either eat at a restaurant or I will cook." Eve laughed. "Can you cook?" "When I cook, no one complains or has leftovers," Henry boasted. "Really?" Eve teased. "I thought you ate out every day. I've been somewhat of a recluse lately." Harry admitted, "Last night was my first night out in a year." "Oh dear, why?" I asked, her voice softening. Henry hesitated. "It is a long story. That night I received my final divorce notice. I needed to commemorate the occasion with something significant." Eve paused and said, "That's too bad. I'll take a chance with your cooking. When should I come over?" Harry gave her his address and she agreed to come at 6. At 605, Eve nervously rang Harry's doorbell. Harry quickly opened it, smiling warmly. "Wow, you look stunning," he said sincerely. Eve, dressed in a flattering dress and with light makeup, blushed. "Thank you. May I come inside?" "Of course. The lasagna will be ready in half an hour. We have melon and Parma ham as an appetizer." "What do you want to drink?" Henry inquired, his eyes twinkling. Eve enjoyed the evening, despite the fact that she drank more wine than she intended. She felt lightheaded after eating dessert. Henry, noticing her state, made a gentle suggestion. "I believe it's best if I take you home. You've had a few too many drinks." Eve responded calmly. "Henry, I would rather stay with you." When she realized what she had said, she blushed deeply. Henry smiled warmly. "I would love that, Eve. But I've got a rule. I do not spend the night with women who have had too many drinks. Let's see how it goes tomorrow." Half an hour later, they arrived at Eve's house. She looked down, embarrassed, and whispered, "I know you don't think I'm attractive enough, but could we at least kiss goodnight?" Henry, stunned, gently lifted her chin and said, "Eve, you are stunning. I'd love to be closer, but not when you're drunk. I don't want you to regret it later. I care about you and want this to be special. Is this clear?" Eve nodded. I was moved by his sincerity. You are the first man who has ever been patient with me. I like you, and I will wait. See you tomorrow. I'll make breakfast. Okay. The following morning, Henry nervously knocked on Heaven's door. When she opened it, he smiled and commented, "You look stunning." How am I supposed to focus on house hunting today? Eve giggled and hugged him. I've fallen for you both. This feels like the beginning of something wonderful. Eve changed into more casual attire after breakfast and met with the real estate agent. The agent showed them 4 properties, one in the city, 2 in the suburbs, and 1 in a nearby village. Henry quickly dismissed the city house, preferring a place with a garden. As they toured, he noticed the agent paying too much attention to Eve and realized the home near the airport was overpriced. Henry confronted the agents. Are you trying to overcharge me while flirting with my date? The agent was caught off guard and stammered. What do you mean? Henry responded. You're attempting to add an extra 100,000 per hour. Unprofessional behavior towards my friend here. We were finished. He turned to Eve. Let's go. Eve, taken aback by Henry's assertiveness, asked, Why did you react like that? Henry explained. The agent didn't respect you and attempted to overcharge me. I don't trust him. We'll pick up the keys to the last house ourselves from the agency. They received the final house keys at the agency, Eve asked. Is it official now that I am your girlfriend? Henry smiled and admitted, Not officially, but I was a little jealous earlier. I would like you to be my girlfriend. So, Eve, what are your thoughts? Eve, touched but cautious, responded, You are serious, correct? I'm recovering from a difficult relationship and expect to go through it again. Henry nodded. I am serious about us. Eve smiled. I have always liked you, even back at school. You've proven to be the man I imagined you'd be. Yes, I would love to be your girlfriend. The house informant appeared ideal, but there were some structural issues. Henry consulted a specialist to assess its condition and a contractor to estimate the cost of a new roof and other repairs. Despite the necessary work, the house remained within Henry's budget, frustrated with the first real estate agent. Henry offered $50,000 less than the asking price. Now we wait, he told Eve. It is getting late. What about dinner 3 weeks later? Henry bought the house after some tough negotiations. Both he and the seller were pleased, but the real estate agency was not pleased with the lower commission. Henry's company then offered him a better 3-year contract, which sparked a celebration. At dinner, Eve inquired, You were involved with stocks, correct? Yes. Why? Henry responded with curiosity. When I divorced, my ex-husband attempted to conceal his assets, but his twin revealed them. He still wants the stocks. I explained that I needed to protect them. Henry promised to help the following morning. Later, he asked if she was prepared to meet Amanda and Brian. She enthusiastically agreed to a dinner introduction. 2 weeks later, they ate at a Turkish restaurant. Amanda and Brian quickly warmed up to Eve, but then Ingrid unexpectedly arrived. What's she doing here? How did she know we were present? Henry asked, perplexed. Amanda recommended, Perhaps she followed us. Eve excused herself to the restroom while Henry explained to his children that Eve was his first serious relationship after the divorce. When Eve returned, she was visibly distressed. How can you treat her like that? She exclaimed, storming out. Ingrid smirked, saying she needed to speak with Henry. He refused angrily, following Eve. Amanda then told Ingrid, You're dead to us. Brian agreed. They exited the restaurant, and the owner asked Ingrid to leave, threatening to contact security if she refused. Ingrid was furious when she found herself outside, angry at Henry for walking away yet again. She decided not to pursue him that night. The next morning, Henry tried to contact Eve, but she did not respond. Even a heartfelt letter returned unopened. Devastated. Henry settled into a routine of work, sleep, and few social interactions. He maintains contact only with his children and close colleagues. 2 weeks after the incident at the restaurant, Henry was summoned to CEO Gerard Dirkson's office, where lawyer Ella Hervey was waiting. Gerard, with his usual friendly demeanor, was absent when Henry inquired about the no fraternization clause in his contract. Henry, startled by the accusation, confirmed that he was aware of the no fraternization policy. The lawyer then accused him of communicating inappropriately with Eve Gardner, his current client. Henry explained that he and Eve had known each other before she became a client. Miss Hervey, on the other hand, declared that this relationship violated company policy and was grounds for immediate dismissal, and demanded his work laptop and phone. Maintaining his composure, Henry stated that the devices were personal property and threatened legal action if they fired him unfairly. Dirksen was taken aback by Henry's calm defiance and insisted on confiscating the devices, citing the protection of sensitive company information. Henry responded, emphasizing that as the account manager, he was responsible for the information and had never violated confidentiality. The lawyer then announced Henry's immediate termination and demanded that he turn over a list of his accounts. Henry replied, "You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." Months later, Henry was successful in court, proving his wrongful termination. The company was ordered to pay him the full contract amount, including bonuses and damages. Many clients were impressed with Henry's integrity and chose to transfer their business to him. The judge dismissed the company's allegations of account theft. As he exited the courthouse, Henry called Amanda and Brian and invited them to celebrate his victory. Returning to his new expansive home, which now includes a library, a large kitchen, a garage, guest rooms, a gym, and a pool, despite his imposing appearance, Henry reflected on his life. He struggled with feelings of isolation. He bought a vintage BMW motorcycle with the intention of restoring it, but lacked motivation. Outwardly, he maintained a professional demeanor for his clients and children, but internally, he had lost faith in relationships and was afraid of being hurt again. Amanda and Brian agreed to meet at a well-known restaurant, the same one where Eve had abruptly left Henry. They became increasingly concerned about their father's depression and discussed various ways to help him, despite the fact that he had rejected counseling and any attempts to set him up on dates. As they talked, they noticed Eve arrive with another man, followed by Ingrid approaching their table. Amanda, her expression hardening, inquired, "What do you want?" Ingrid, attempting to remain composed, responded, "I want to talk to both of you. This situation has lasted long enough. I'm still your mother." Brian faced her squarely. "After what you did to Dad, you aren't our mother anymore. You almost broke him. We cannot forgive that. You aren't welcome here, and we believe you were involved in getting him fired. You should leave." Amanda ignored her mother and called Henry. "Dad, we're coming over. Do you have anything you want us to bring?" Henry, puzzled, inquired. "Why the sudden visit?" "Oh, let's just say we have to get out of here," she replied cryptically. As they were leaving, a man approached them from outside. "Hello, I'm Jake Gardner, Eva's brother. I believe my sister was misled about your father. Can we speak privately?" Amanda was taken aback and handed him her business card. "Please contact me soon. Our father is in desperate need of assistance, and we don't know how to help him. Our mother isn't helping either." Jake nodded in agreement and returned to Eve. She inquired, "What are you doing? Henry does not want anything to do with me." Jake responded, "You can be sure of that. You have been miserable since that night, and I believe you still have feelings for him. This could be your last opportunity to clear things up. I'll make the call." He looked at Amanda's card and realized he hadn't gotten her last name. "Amanda, please let us sort this out tomorrow morning." Amanda's phone rang at 8 a.m. the following day. Amanda Vander speaks. "Good morning, Amanda. This is Jake Gardner. We met yesterday. Good morning. Jake, you aren't calling too early. My father is in a bad emotional state. You mentioned that Eve still cares about him." "Yes. When we meet, she will explain everything. She's been down since that day. I've scheduled a meeting at the restaurant, hoping that we can all talk. Can you come to my place? Approximately 5. We need to talk about everything. I will ask my brother to join us. You must genuinely care about your sister to go through this ordeal. I do. She was always looking out for me. Now it's my turn to help her. I will see you at 5. If your brother can make it on time, he is welcome to join us whenever he can. I will send the address and make something to eat." "Great. We'll bring drinks. Wine, beer, or both. Both, please. I prefer beer. Eve prefers wine. Consider it finished. See you at 5. A little after 5. 005 people gathered around Jake's kitchen table, including his wife, Lisa. She poured wine as Jake served roasted chicken, vegetables, and freshly baked bread. Amanda interrupted the silence. "Should we talk while we eat or wait?" Jake suggested. "We should start now." Amanda turned to face Eve. "Can you tell me what my mother told you about my father?" Eve blushed and paused before speaking. "I will try. She described my ex-husband's abusive behavior in great detail, which shocked me. She inquired if Henry had explained why they divorced. When I declined, she claimed he had verbally and emotionally abused her for months and cheated on her. I believed her and fled. Amanda and Brian shook their heads. Brian expressed deep concern. That story has some truth in it, except for one large lie. Our father did not do those things. It was our mother. She manipulated the situation, even orchestrating his dismissal through false accusations. They used a photograph of you and our father from that day to back up her lies. Eve turned pale and her voice trembled. Is Henry truly who he appears to be? I abandoned a good man because I believed your mother's lies. Tears welled up in her eyes and she sobbed. Amanda reached out to comfort her, whispering, There may still be a way to make things right between you two. Amanda suggested, her tone hopeful. Eve appeared uncertain. What do we do? Lisa, who was observing the conversation, spoke up. Your mother will constantly try to cause trouble. You have to deal with her first. I have an idea that you might not like. Brian leaned in, intrigued. Tell us. We will consider almost anything. Lisa took a deep breath. You must allow your mother back into your lives, but only under certain conditions. She must leave your father alone and see a psychiatrist to address her issues. Amanda and Brian exchanged glances before nodding. Amanda replied, We can do that. But what about our father? Meanwhile, Henry was swimming laps to relieve his frustration. Despite being in excellent shape, his 2 failed relationships had made him wary of beginning new ones. That day, a female client threatened to take her business elsewhere if he didn't date her, so he declined and instead recommended her to his former company. After a long swim, he walked inside just as the doorbell rang. He checked the camera and saw Ingrid, and as his anger rose, he opened the door. Ingrid, whatever you came here for, the answer is no. Leave, he said sternly, slamming the door and activating his security system. I am prepared to seek a restraining order if necessary. Ingrid, who had dressed to impress after receiving a clean bill of health following a bout with syphilis, was taken aback by Henry's rejection, particularly given his fit physique. Just then, Henry's phone rang. What? Oh, sorry, Amanda, I thought it was your mother. She was standing at the door. What did she want? I didn't give her an opportunity to speak. I told her to leave. Amanda sighed at the other end. Dad, are you okay? When will you get out of your shell? We miss you. Henry, sounding tired, responded, I don't know. My feelings for her have faded as a result of everything she's put me through. But remember, she is still your mother. Don't make any rash decisions, such as completely cutting her off. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I blocked her number, but I still have dreams about her and wake up missing her. Dad, you need to move on. Can we come over for dinner tomorrow? Perhaps we can help you get out of this funk. Henry hesitated, but eventually agreed. Okay, 600. Use your keys. I plan to swim, but I will also make time to cook. See you tomorrow. Love you. I love you too, Dad. Amanda expressed hope. She immediately called Eve. Eve, please meet me tomorrow at 330. We need to be dads. S ranges between 400 and 500. I informed him that only Brian and I would be coming for dinner. So start thinking about what to wear. Eve's excitement was obvious. Thank you, Amanda. I already know what I'll be wearing. See you then. Meanwhile, Ingrid had been desperately trying to contact her children, sending letters and even showing up at their doors. But her phone number was blocked, and her letters went unanswered. Desperate, she called Amanda again. Mother, why are you calling? You know we don't want to talk to you, Amanda replied coldly. I really needed to hear your voice. I miss both of you so much. What do I need to do to see you again? Ingrid pleaded. Amanda took a deep breath. Dad doesn't need you to interfere. He's been doing well without you. But Brian and I discussed and agreed on 2 conditions beforehand. We will consider speaking with you. Are you listening? Yes. Anything? Ingrid replied enthusiastically. First, you must leave that alone. We know you scared his girlfriend away and were involved in his firing. He has moved on, taking some clients with him, so leave him alone, I promise. Ingrid spoke, but doubt crept into her voice. Second, you should see a psychiatrist to address your obsession with Dad. You will never get him back, Mom. I'm not sure if I can do that. Ingrid trailed off. Amanda stayed firm. I will go with you. It is part of the deal. Brian agrees. Let us know when your first appointment is and leave Dad alone. Ingrid felt a glimmer of hope, despite her dissatisfaction with the terms. The following day, Amanda and Eve arrived at Henry's house. Amanda whispered, "You look amazing." Eve, nervous, responded, "I'm extremely anxious. I feel ill. Surprise him at the pool." Amanda smiled and took a deep breath as she suggested he run away there. Eve approached the pool and noticed Henry swimming. She was struck by how fit he appeared. She summoned her courage and stepped into the water, where the current carried her gently toward him. Henry instinctively reached out to steady her as they drifted to the other side. He pressed the emergency stop button and the current stopped. He noticed Eve's anxious expression and asked, "What are you doing here? Please do not send me away." "Let me explain first," she begged. Henry was stunned and nodded. "I'm not throwing you out, but you should explain." "How did you arrive here?" Amanda called from the gym door. "Play me, Dad. There is coffee and tea in the kitchen," as they sat around the kitchen table. Henry looked at Amanda, who explained that she jumped into the pool. "Eve, you should tell him everything." Eve added that he wouldn't look up, so I needed to do something, but I want to do it again. Henry sighed, attempting to collect his thoughts. "Amanda, Brian, I don't know how I feel about this. You're meddling in things," Amanda interjected gently. "We're not trying to meddle, Dad, but you seem unhappy. We needed to do something, and that's how we met Jake and Eve." Henry frowned. "Jake?" Eve quickly clarified. My younger brother, Henry, who appeared confused, said, "Okay, I need to understand everything. Just promise not to get upset and allow me to finish the story." Amanda and Brian nodded. "We understand, Dad. We trust you, which is why we believe Eve should explain everything." Eve took a deep breath, looked to Amanda for reassurance, and started. "When I met you, Henry, I was on my first date following a disastrous marriage. My ex was abusive, beginning with verbal abuse and progressing to physical violence. You noticed me panicking in the pool because he once attempted to drown me. The local police were extremely conservative and would not assist unless there were visible injuries. I finally ended up in the hospital and he's now in jail. Then, Henry, I met you at a school event. You were independent." Eve spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "You didn't care about fitting in with the popular crowd and were always willing to assist others with their assignments. Even though I had only known you for a short time, I fell in love the moment you asked me to be your girlfriend. I was over the moon. But then, a month later, you introduced me to Amanda and Brian at a restaurant and your ex-wife arrived, referring to me as your fifth girlfriend. I panicked and ran. I ignored your attempts to reach me. My brother Jake convinced me everything was a lie, and I attempted to contact you. But my calls did not go through." Henry nodded, remembering how he had blocked her number. Eve continued, "I didn't have the courage to knock on your door. I was worried you'd turn me away." Henry inquired, "So what gave you the confidence to show up today?" Before Eve could respond, Amanda jumped in. "Jake, Brian, and I pushed Dad to listen to you and Eve." "Why did you jump in my pool?" Henry inquired, tenderly using the nickname Eve, which caused her heart to flutter. Eve admitted, her voice shaking, that she desperately wanted your attention. "I was scared, but I overcame my fear. I'm very sorry. I ran away without asking for your side of the story. Will you forgive me?" "Henry, barely above a whisper," said Eve, "and I told Amanda I still dream about you." "Do you know Leonard Cohen's song Avalanche? You became my avalanche. We both need therapy to get through this." Eve's voice wavered. "Does that imply that you accept me back?" Henry shook his head slowly. "No." Eve paled, but Henry quickly resumed. "I've never told you to leave. You ran away. Should I ask if you want to return?" Eve squeaked. "Yes, I was a fool for leaving. Can I stay tonight?" Amanda interrupted. "Father, I have something to tell you about Eve." Henry groaned. "Give me a break, Cupid daughter," Amanda said. "Brian and I agreed to let Mom back into our lives under two conditions. She leaves you alone and goes to see a psychologist. I'll go with her." Henry nodded thoughtfully. "That's wise. If it helps to avoid future tensions, I promise to be respectful when I see her, but that doesn't mean I'll invite her over to dinner. There will be occasions when you are. Brian may want a family gathering, and I do not want you to have to choose sides because of me. I can, however, speak for your mother." Amanda sighed with relief. "Oh, Daddy, you're very understanding. Thank you," and kissed his cheeks. "Now I will leave you to Eve. Are you coming, Brian?" She grinned mischievously. Eve, still unsure, looked to Henry. Do I need to leave? Henry smiled warmly. Not on my account. I have an extra bedroom. He laughed. But whatever room you choose, you'll find me in bed. Eve flushed and smiled. They went to bed, and after a moment, Henry spoke first. Will you marry me? Eve sat up suddenly, eyes wide. What have you just said? Henry repeated. Will you marry me? Eve remained silent for a moment before asking, Do you really want to marry me? You do not have to. I am yours, with or without a ring. I promise to be by your side throughout everything. Henry smiled. That's enough for me. I promise the same thing. But for me, it's about making a commitment. Consider us married now. Would you like to move in or should I? Eve laughed. I'll get my stuff. I don't have much following my divorce. You do not need to worry, Eve. He can't hurt you anymore. The next morning, Henry called Amanda and Brian to share the good news. After breakfast, he and Eve went to get her belongings. A year later, Henry witnessed Eve swimming, having overcome her fear of water. He hummed as he walked back to his office, stopping at the mailbox. Inside, he made coffee and sorted through the mail, discovering a UN-stamped letter addressed to him. He groaned when he recognized the handwriting. Eve, noting his mood, inquired, Harry, look at me, please. Henry looked up and Eve continued. Ingrid wrote the letter. We talked when we met at Brian's place. Her counselor helped her realize her mistakes, and she is now attempting to make amends. Please read this. It'll help you understand. Henry grumbled. I don't need to have a relationship with her. I only want to be left alone. Eve, firm yet gentle, took his coffee, sat down at his desk and said, You must read it or she will continue to haunt you. Read the letter. Henry nodded slowly before opening the envelope. The letter reads, Dear Henry, I still think of you as such, despite the fact that I know you don't. Our children have told me you don't care about me anymore, which shocked me. But I need to apologize. When you left, you said you were angry. There were no words, and now I can't find the words to express my regret. I destroyed our marriage and attempted to ruin your life. Amanda and Brian forced me to go to counseling, and it was brutal. The counselor accused me of being jealous, selfish, and entitled. I'm sorry I hurt you so badly. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I do not deserve it. The kids said you'd be civil to me, which you can accomplish by ignoring me. I've dated other men and realized I threw away everything we had. Please let me into your life for the sake of the children. I want to pursue you or infiltrate your life. Will you talk to me when we meet? Henry sighed and set down the letter, feeling a range of emotions. I long to hear your voice. The letter concluded with remorse and love. Signed, Ingrid. Henry sighed deeply as he saw Ava's expectant expression. I will think about it, but don't expect a response anytime soon. I dislike it when people pry into my feelings. Eve wanted to console Henry, but she stopped when she saw his emotionless expression and cold eyes. She nodded, realizing he needed time to process everything. Henry went to his garage and worked on his 1949 BMW R24 motorcycle, attempting to distract himself by disassembling the carburetor. However, he struggled to concentrate. His thoughts were muddled with frustration. By dinner time, Henry had yet to speak, and Eve started to worry. She asked gently, Beloved, how can I help you? Would you like to talk about it? Henry responded gruffly. I wish I could cancel the letter. I regret reading it. It makes me feel manipulated by the children. Eve was taken aback by his aggressive tone. That is not true. Nobody is forcing you, she said soothingly. Henry stood up and paced back and forth. Really? You discussed the letter with Amanda, Brian, and my ex-wife, and you all encouraged me to read it. How is this not persuasion? I promised to think about it, but now I feel like an idiot. Maybe I should go away and clear my mind. Eve paled at his words. She had expected a reaction, but not such outrage. Harry, she started cautiously, maybe taking a break would help. Just take care. Henry exhaled. Tomorrow I'll take the RV to Limburg. I'll book a campsite and try to figure things out. The following morning, Henry packed up and drove south, grumbling to himself. Just when I think I'm free of her, she pulls another trick. He shook his head in annoyance. And the only open campsite is where it all began. Meanwhile, back in Vermont. Eve attempted to contact Amanda but was unable to get through. She eventually contacted Brian. Hello, Eve. Is everything okay? You usually call Amanda Brian. Harry read Ingrid's letter yesterday, and it did not go well. He felt pressed and left for Limburg this morning in the RV. I'm worried and don't know what to do. Brian sighed deeply. Damn, this is unexpected. I'll come over after I contact Amanda and inform Mom. For the time being, let us hope that Dad calms down. Stay strong, Eve. He will come back. Despite Brian's reassurances, Eve's anxiety persisted. That afternoon, Henry arrived at the campground and parked his RV. While exploring, he came across a familiar face, the real estate agent who had infected Ingrid with syphilis. Henry's chest tightened with rage, but he kept his distance, watching as the man walked away, unaware of Henry's presence. The following morning, Henry approached the campground manager. Do you know anything about the people over there? Henry inquired, gesturing toward the agent's campsite. The manager nodded and frowned. They are bad news, but lack proof. There is not much I can do. However, I have a CCTV camera on site. If they make a mistake, we will notice it. Henry smiled knowingly as he formulated a plan. So, if I provoke them, didn't you see anything? The manager chuckled like Manuel from Faulty Towers. I know nothing, he said, imitating a Spanish accent. After all, I'm from Barcelona. Henry laughed, appreciating the reference. We understand each other, he said as he left the office. He approached the agent's side and greeted the men warmly. Good morning, gentlemen. The agent, who appeared haggard and suspicious, squinted at Henry. Do I know you? He asked. Henry kept his cool and replied, No, I'm just offering coffee because we're neighbors and you seem to need it after a fun night. He introduced himself as Abe. Call me Abe, he said gruffly. Also bring something strong. It's been a rough night. Sure, Henry agreed. What time? 3, Abe replied. Also bring your strongest materials. Henry departed and returned with brandy, whiskey, and Dutch Genever. The latter has been heavily diluted with water. At 300, he met Abe, his friend, and a young woman named Brigitte. As they drank, Henry secretly recorded their conversation on his phone. Abe, loosening up after a few drinks, boasted about their exploits. Bridget, I'm only 19, he said with a sly grin. But who cares? You'd be surprised at how easy it is to get a girl to agree to something. We even had one who told her husband to back off because she was having too much fun with us. Henry felt his stomach churn, but he pushed on. What if the woman does not want to? He asked, pretending innocence. Abe smirked. That is simple to manage, but I prefer when they are willing. He then slipped something into Brigitte's drink, transitioning from wine to cocktail. Bridget became visibly drunk and resistant. Abe and his friend became more aggressive. Abe finally declared that it was time to use Daddy's little helpers, which referred to sedatives. Henry stood up, ensuring that the CCTV camera captured everything. I don't like where this is heading. I'm out. What are you planning to do about it? Abe grinned maliciously. Henry, attempting to escalate the situation, muttered, Which of you needs syphilis treatment? Abe's friend turned purple in anger. How do you know about that? He shouted. Henry, keeping his cool, responded, My ex-wife treated. You idiot. Now that I see how you act, I'm going to stop it. Abe became enraged and lunged at Henry with a knife. Henry staggered back, collapsing into a chair as chaos ensued. Meanwhile, Eve, the informant, was on the phone with Brian. Dad is at the hospital, Brian informed her, his voice tight and concerned. What happened? I asked her, my heart racing. Brian explained that the real estate agent, Abe, stabbed him. Dad must have been filming them doing something shady. He is stable, though it was close. We are on our way to the hospital now. Eve experienced a rush of fear and relief. She said, I'll be there as soon as I can, and grabbed her keys. Thank you for informing me. As Eve drove to the hospital, her mind raced with ideas about Henry and their future together, hoping they could overcome this new challenge. He was stabbed, and police intend to arrest him for assault. Eve's voice quivered. What? Is he okay? Brian responded. He needs surgery. The hospital called me. Amanda and I will pick you up so we can visit him. Okay. I will pack a bag, Eve responded, her voice shaking with worry. The car ride was tense, with Brian driving quickly but carefully. Eve sobbed softly in the back seat. I wish we hadn't given him that letter, she admitted, her guilt weighing heavily on her. Amanda spoke quietly, attempting to remain composed. Dad is not the type who fights unless absolutely necessary. He must have been defending himself. I almost felt sorry for the other guy. 2 hours later, they arrived at the hospital and were greeted by Officer Jansen. "Good evening, I'm Officer Jansen. Who are you?" Following introductions, Jansen explained that Mr. Vander is no longer a suspect. CCTV footage and phone records clearly indicate that it was self-defense. He prevented a woman from being assaulted. 2 men attacked him, but he is very skilled. They all regret messing with him. Eve anxious and interrupted. "How is he? Is he going to be okay?" Jansen shakes his head. "I am unsure. You should talk to the doctors." After several inquiries, they discovered the correct room. A nurse informed them that Henry was undergoing surgery. His condition was serious, but he was expected to make it through. Despite significant blood loss, they were given the option of staying in the hospital or renting a room across the street. The trio decided to stay close and crossed the street to a guest room, where they anxiously waited. As Henry lay unconscious, he began to regain consciousness. He heard a steady beeping and wondered what the noise was. "I've got a headache." He wanted to say something, but his mouth felt sealed shut. A deep and comforting voice spoke. "There he is. Mr. Vander, if you can hear me, please raise your right hand." Henry, groggy, raised his hand slightly. "Good," said the doctor. "I am Dr. Ritter. I'm here to help you recover. You have just narrowly avoided a fatal injury, so remain calm. I'll take out some of the tubes and wet your mouth. And you can see some very concerned people." After removing the tube, Dr. Dorita opened the door to let Eve, Amanda, and Brian in. As he left, he muttered under his breath, "Lucky fool," and left the family to reunite. Eve, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispered, "What happened? I shouldn't have given you the letter." Henry smiled weakly and whispered back, "No, it's fine. It cost me. But I now have a clear response to Ingrid's letter." He sighed and closed his eyes. "I am exhausted and have fallen back asleep." After a brief visit, the children met with Dr. Dorita. "The knife nicked a major vein," he explained, "but we were able to stabilize him in time. We stitched him up, and although he will be sore and numb for a while, he should recover completely. However, he must abstain from any strenuous activity, including martial arts, for at least 3 months." Brian, surprised, inquired, "How did you know?" "My father does Krav Maga?" Dr. DeRitter smiled knowingly. "That explains a lot, doesn't it? Officially, I cannot say, but let's just say you should see the other guys. One will need a cane for the rest of his life, while the other is currently eating with a straw." A week later, Henry sat in an armchair at home, holding Ingrid's letter. He spoke sadly when I read the letter and went camping. I considered letting Ingrid back into my life, but then I discovered that the men at the campground were the same ones. Ingrid had been involved with something nearly 4 years ago. They trusted me despite not knowing who I was, and revealed that she gave them the venereal disease, not the other way around. She drank after their fun. Not until she cheated on me. Long before I ended my relationship with her. She's not coming back into my life. However, I will treat her as a stranger. I do not want our children to have to choose between parents because of my decisions. It is my responsibility to tell her. So please do not interfere. 2 weeks later, Dr. DeRitter cleared Henry to resume exercising under the supervision of a physical therapist. 6 weeks after the altercation, he was still unsure how to approach his ex-wife, so he decided to improvise. A week later, Henry waited at the same restaurant where Ingrid had attempted to end his relationship with Eve. He and Eve were now deeply in love after overcoming their insecurities through counseling. As he sat, he noticed Ingrid enter with a guest standing. He waved them over. "Ingrid, you brought a companion for a private conversation." Ingrid, who appeared nervous, responded, "Hello, Harry. This is my counselor. She is here to support you." Harry raised his eyebrow. "Are you still trying to manipulate me, Ingrid? Perhaps I should have brought my own counselor after what you had put me through." Ingrid, taken aback, responded, "I thought we could talk it through. My counselor is only here to help." Harry sighed. "I promised you dinner, so let's eat first, then talk." Ingrid noticed that Harry ate sparingly and drank wine infrequently, but he appeared relaxed. After dessert, Harry inquired, "So, Ingrid, what do you want from me?" Ingrid, almost choking on her ice cream, was interrupted by her counselor. "Sir, you are being quite rude. Ingrid is attempting to resolve the issues between you. This hostility isn't benefiting Henry." His expression hardened. "You have no idea how much pain she has caused me." Ingrid, do you understand why I was in the hospital? Ingrid. His cold demeanor caused him to stammer in the hospital. Yes, but I'm not sure why the children haven't told me anything. Henry leaned forwards, his gaze intense. Would you like to know why? Both women nodded. Henry proceeded. After reading your letter, I had to do some serious soul-searching. My loved ones asked me to think about what you wrote, so I went camping, which happened to be the same place where your affair began. There I met the men you were involved with. I gained their trust and recorded them bragging about their achievements. When I objected, they got into a fight, and one pulled a knife. He paused for a sip of his drink before proceeding. I have a portion of this recording on my phone, the counselor interjected. I don't think that's necessary. Henry cut her off. It's necessary. You are not my counselor, and the reasoning behind my decision must be clear. He played the recording, and Ingrid's face paled as her lies were revealed. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the recording ended. Henry looked at her emotionlessly. These men recognized me only after the recording was completed. I encouraged them to attack me, but they freely disclosed the information. So, ex-wife, I've concluded that you cheated on me with at least one man months before this incident. You humiliated and insulted me for 6 months, violating our vows. Your grand finale at camp cemented my decision. There was a profound silence. Henry. His expression remained grim. To paraphrase, I am now in good company, so please back off. With that, Henry stood up, paid the bill, and left the restaurant, returning to Eve, the woman he truly loved. Here is the next story. Are you going to see the doctor again? I asked. Yes. This is the 3rd time I've had an infection this summer, and I want to get rid of it. I could tell by her tone that this was important to her. This was also important to me. Every time she got an infection down there, our sex life came to an end until she recovered. It was already the 5th infection in a year. I hugged her, and she got in the car and drove away. I watched her drive down the street and take the freeway on-ramp while she was gone. I repaired the lawnmower and the lock on the back gate. She was still not present, so I went to play on the computer. I researched genital tract infections and found 6 different websites. I drank some iced tea and returned to the computer. I went to a few more websites and discovered something interesting. A woman's susceptibility to infections increases when she has multiple partners. According to studies, a woman's body becomes accustomed to one sexual partner, and introducing a new partner causes confusion in the system, promoting the growth of bacteria. When I heard her car in the driveway, I stopped researching. She stopped on her way home to buy dinner. She told me about her visit to the doctor and the new treatment she was given. He gave her a packet of test strips so she could keep track of her pH levels. If the itching was due to a problem, she claims that the strips will show this. The doctor warned that if she drops below a certain level, it could be problematic. According to my research, bacterial growth requires an increase in pH. She showed me the strips and a small book in which we would record the results. I suggested taking the test right away. She stated that the doctor had already tested her, and the result was 5.3. I stated that if I took the test and received the same result, I would know that I had done everything correctly. We went into our bedroom, and while she undressed, I read the instructions for the test strips. Lynn asked me to hurry up because she was embarrassed. Of course I smiled. We were married for 9 years, and she never laid out in front of me with the lights set to 20s past. I stored the strip next to the packaging under our bedside lamp. After comparing, I discovered the result was 5.3, exactly like in the doctor's office. I jotted down the time, date, and 5.3 on the first page of the small book. Did the doctor tell you how often you should test? Twice per day. He wants me back in a week. What about the itch? I have pills and cream to use following the tests. Fine. Perhaps this will help you solve the problem faster. Are you saying this because you want to have sex with me again? I want you to feel better, I continued, smiling. I simply want to stop itching. Amen. Did he give you any other advice about what to do? Yes, but I'm not sure I can handle it all. What exactly? When I'm at home, he advises against wearing panties. It is not recommended to wear pants at home or outside the home. He stated that the air would help you recover faster. Why can't you do it? If I walk around here without panties, you will chase me all day. No, I'll want to, but I promise to leave you alone until you're better. Walking around like that will feel strange. Weirder than itching? You are correct. He also stated that there would be no baths, only showers. Also, use a hairdryer in that area after showering. It seems like it will help keep the area dry while it heals. If you are serious and promise not to pester me all the time, I will do all of this. She was prepared to test the doctor's theory. We had dinner, watched TV until late in the evening, and then went to bed. I've been sleeping naked since I was 11. Lynn usually wears panties and an oversized t-shirt, so she began to pull up her panties. I questioned why she looked at the panties on her knees, lowered them to the ground, and stepped out of them. You are correct. I am better off without them. We tested her twice a day for a week, and she walked around naked the whole time she was home. She wore white cotton panties to work because they were more breathable. There are also skirts. By the end of the week, her pH had settled at 4.3, and the redness and itching had subsided. Her visit to the doctor was more enjoyable. He liked the table and suggested keeping an eye on pH, albeit less frequently. He also let her resume sexual relations. I wasn't present, but I believe he said she could resume sexual relations with me. That evening, we had our first sex after 23 days. I was an attentive husband. I took her out to dinner, gave her a shower and a massage, and paid her attention for more than an hour. 1 hour. After that, I expressed my curiosity and tested her pH again. She panicked when she saw the number 5.6. We talked, looked up some information on the internet, and retook the test an hour later. The bar displayed 4.7. We concluded that her body quickly regains acidity. After me. We went to bed, and the next morning she asked me to take the test again. The bar indicated 4.3. We happily dressed for work and returned to our normal routine. During the first month, I noticed that she purchased several new skirts. All of her silk, nylon, and other panties had been replaced with white cotton or no panties. When we were driving, she would open the car vents and direct the airflow under the skirt. I watched but did not complain. When she caught me doing this, she would smile and call me dirty and old. I just smiled more. She stopped wearing long pants and wore wide-legged shorts instead. Plenty of airflow. 3 months passed with no new infections. I noticed her scent had changed. When she was in a good mood, I enjoyed her scent. When she was itching and uncomfortable, the first thing I noticed was a difference in her smell and taste. She hadn't smelled fishy in months. We went to a party at our neighbors Frank and Francine's house on a Friday night after she got home from work. They were celebrating their 15th anniversary. We danced, ate barbecue chicken and ribs, and drank copious amounts of beer and other beverages. Their home had 2 bathrooms, and after a few hours of eating and drinking, they were constantly in use. Lynn has a small bladder and has left the party several times to use the restroom. We returned home around 1 a.m. and went straight to bed. I was convinced Lynn had passed out rather than fallen asleep within a minute of getting into bed. She fidgeted slightly, and I noticed that her hand was between her legs. It appeared that she was itching. I got up, took the test strips, and ran the test. When I compared the strip to the packaging, I was stunned. Her pH reading was 7.2. The rate would only be that high if someone other than me had sex with her, which couldn't be me. I raised her pH to 5.6 after we had sex, but someone increased it to 7. My mind went crazy. I tried to explain that she was drunk and didn't know what she was doing. Then another part of my brain kicked in. She didn't mind walking home or talking to me along the way. Naturally, I did not sleep well that night. When Lynn awoke in the morning, I noticed her itching again. I think we should run a test. I replied, no, it's nothing, as she prepared breakfast and we began our Saturday chores. She was in the laundry room while I was working in the yard. An hour later, I went inside for a cold drink and noticed her itching again. Honey, this is the second time I have seen you and I will bring the test kit. I did not wait. I just went for the set. When I returned, she said, forget it. I'm busy. We can take the test later. I stood my ground. I told Nick, we'll do it later. They cost more than $1 per test. So, let's get this over with. I do not want you to get another infection. She leaned over to watch as I compared the strip to the chart. On the package, she showed 6.6. Something is wrong. I said, on Monday, call your doctor and ask what caused your levels to rise so high and how you can lower them. I understand how to lower it. I still have the medication he gave me last time. I will start taking them right now. She left the laundry room and I returned to work in the yard. I knew the itching and medication meant we wouldn't have sex, but I was fine with it. I was convinced she was having sex with someone in our area, if she had sex with anyone else. I did not want to have sex with her anymore. She promised me over breakfast on Monday that she would call her doctor during her morning break. I knew her break began at 10. I instructed her to call me immediately after speaking with the doctor. I visited the medical building next to my office. I spoke with the gynecologist for whom I did computer work. I told him everything I knew. He apologized, but signs indicated she was likely having sex with a new partner. I returned to the office and waited for her call at 10:40. My cell phone rang. It was Lynn. She cried. She told me that the doctor informed her that she had an allergic reaction to me. I mentioned to her that it had been 5 days since we had sex. She abruptly stopped crying and asked what I was blaming her for. I blamed the doctor for going insane, not you. The building next to my office houses a medical practice. I'll make an appointment for you so we can get a second opinion. Do you know the doctors in this building? Hell no, I do not hang out with doctors. It is probably more accurate to say that doctors do not associate with men like me. I called Dr. Seacrest and told him what she'd told me. I asked him to examine her, check her, and let us know if she had sex with anyone other than me. He inquired as to when the next party was scheduled in our area. I mentioned that I was planning a party this weekend. He scheduled Lynn's appointment for Monday. He told me to come to his office. He had something for me on the way home from work. I stopped by Dr. Seacrest for a minute. He handed me a tampon in a plastic tube. He advised me that if Lynn fell asleep right after the party, I should take a swab and perform a swab, seal it in a tube, and deliver it to his office on Monday morning. Lynn's appointment was scheduled for 1 p.m. The rest of the week went fairly normally for us. There is no sex. She wore skirts and avoided doing anything that would attract my sexual attention. She didn't realize I was thinking about her sexually, all the time, whether she was present or not. What was unusual was that I was preparing a party for her. I made up an excuse and informed everyone in the area that the party was to commemorate the anniversary of our first weekend together. I purchased food and hid it in neighbors' homes. I bought beer and wine and invited 2 guys to bring their own grills and cook the meat. On Saturday, I took Lynn to dinner, and while we were gone, the neighbors prepared the party and began cooking. Lynn wore a colorful skirt and a peasant blouse to lunch. I wore khakis and a pullover for lunch. She took a salad and I chose a shrimp salad. I complimented her on her good looks, and she thanked me for warning her that we wouldn't have sex until we found out about the allergy. I laughed and replied, "That's normal. Only 3 days remain. I'll get through this." As we drove home, I wondered if there were only 3 days left. Maybe it will last forever. When she saw all of our neighbors and discovered why we were having a party, she pretended to be surprised and even kissed me. She even teared up when her best friend Linda informed her that the party was being held to commemorate the anniversary of our first trip to the ocean. Someone turned on the music and the couples began dancing. She and I performed a fast and slow dance. Holding my slender Lynn while we danced was always enjoyable for me. At the end of the slow dance, she said, "You should calm down before dancing with anyone else." She then left my embrace and went outside as the host. I ensured everyone had a good time. I helped clean up after the meal, disposed of the empty beer cans, and opened the windows for fresh air. Several times I restocked the bathrooms with toilet paper, soap, and tissues. Around midnight, Lynn and I danced again. When she spoke, the old Barbra Streisand song "All in Love is Fair" was playing. I detected a strong odor of alcohol and noticed that her speech was slurred slightly. When the song finished, she kissed me with her tongue and left. I went outside to help wrap up the party. 2 minutes later, I looked out the back door window and saw Lynn dancing with Willie Jordan. She was pressed up against him. I heard the music stop, but they didn't let go of one another. I went down the porch and collected 2 bags of trash. I carried them to the curb and walked back out onto our front porch. Willie looked at the back door and kissed Lynn. When the back door opened, Lynn pulled his hand away, breaking their embrace. They looked around and spotted another neighbor. After that, they relaxed a little. I kept cleaning until all of the guests had left and the house and yard were in order. Lynn had already fallen asleep by the time I got upstairs. I shook it and said, "Fire!" She did not move. I used a swab to smear. I put the tampon in the car and fell asleep on the couch, fully clothed. She woke me up around 10 a.m. "Why didn't you get to bed?" She was already dressed and prepared for the day. Gray skirt with white blouse. Good morning. I just sat down to rest and bam, it is morning. Go have a shower. I'll make you a nice breakfast. You deserve it after such a wild night. This is simply my way of thanking you for making my life so wonderful. I spoke as I walked up the stairs. I took a shower and put on my khakis and dark brown shirt again. When I arrived downstairs, she was on the phone and hung up as soon as she heard me. So, what's for breakfast? I asked. French toast, sausage, and coffee. She motioned to the table, and I saw my plate filled and ready. I sat down as Lynn bustled around, getting ready for the day. She told me she had lunch plans with 2 co-workers and then went shopping. I told her to have fun shopping and don't overspend. After breakfast, I cleaned up and went to check my emails. I saw a letter from a neighbor and decided to wait until Lynn had gone shopping before opening it. Other letters were from co-workers and distant friends. Lynn came by to say goodbye, and I was the first to respond. She noticed I was writing a response to our friends in Orlando. Please remember to say hello to me. Perhaps we should go see them in the spring. Are you leaving? Yes, I will be back before dinner. Do you want to go anywhere? Maybe we'll discuss it when you get back. She kissed me on the cheek, placed her hand on my shoulder, and then left. I opened a letter from our neighbor, Alan White. We played on the same basketball team a few years ago and remained friends despite a fun but unsuccessful season. Nick, I may be completely wrong, but if the situation were reversed, I would expect you to say something. Yesterday at the party, I went upstairs to use your bathroom, which was naturally crowded. I entered the guest bedroom and sat on the bed to wait. I could see the bathroom door. Willie emerged from the bathroom after about 5 or 6 minutes and hurried downstairs. I got out of bed and took a step as Lynn exited the bathroom. She checked herself in the hallway mirror before heading downstairs. She did not see me. The air freshener was sprayed in the bathroom, but the odor lingered, making me even more suspicious. This is what I witnessed. I hope I am wrong and that my thoughts are incorrect. If you need to talk or get help, please contact Alan. I grabbed the phone and called him. When he responded, I said I had already suspected. I really need your help. Call Willie and ask to borrow something. Lynn went shopping and I'd like to know where Willie is. Understood. I'll call you back in a few minutes. I opened Word and began writing a list of things to do if our marriage ended. Thankfully, we did not have any children. Who will be affected by this? I was at point 7 when my phone rang. Nick Allen. He took Helen's car for service. She's expecting him in a few hours. She has a blue Toyota, doesn't she? Yes, RAV4. I want to go on a ride and drink beer. Do you want to join? Want to get arrested? No, consider it as fact-gathering. Fine, I'll come to you, and we will go. Does your wife understand what you saw? No. Then we'll go have a beer. Perhaps we will watch basketball on a large screen somewhere. Right. The phone went off, and I got ready to leave. I grabbed a new memory card for our digital camera, the camera and my wallet. Alan was walking along my path as I left the house. We got into the car and drove off. We were silent for the first few minutes. I thought it was fortunate that we didn't live near a large city where they could easily vanish. Finding them should not be too difficult. Alan suggested driving past locations where Willie could service Helen's vehicle. Her car was on a lift at the 3rd location we passed. I usually don't pay attention to motels around town. I have never stayed in them. As we passed each one, we looked for Lynn's car on instinct. I drove through the 5th motel and down the back alley. Lynn's car was parked in an alleyway. I took 5 pictures of her car. 2 showed how close she was to the motel. I then loosened the valve on the front left wheel, and the tire flattened within a minute. I parked my car out of sight and waited an hour and a half while Lynn went out to her car. As soon as she noticed the flat tire, she returned to her room. Willie walked out and buttoned his shirt. Click. I took a photo of him leaving the room while buttoning his shirt, walking next to Lynn. They spoke in the car. Quick. They then opened the trunk of her car. Quick. Willie changed the tire. Click. When everything was collected, he looked around, clicked, and kissed Lynn. Click, click. Lynn got in the car and drove away. Willie returned to the room. Click and leave. 5 minutes later, we followed him to the shop where Helen's car was being serviced. He paid the bill and departed. We drove to a nearby shopping center and spotted Lynn's car in the parking lot. I used my key to open the trunk of her car. There were 3 packages. One from Macy's, one from JCPenney, and one from Brookstone. I photographed all three, including their contents. Then I swapped Macy's items in the Brookstone bag, J.C. Penney's shirts in the Macy's bag, and Brookstone items in the J.C. bag. Pennies. We locked the car and parked quite a distance away. Alan Lynn stated that she dates women from work. You could go to the mall and see if you can find her. It would be nice if she hadn't noticed you. But if she does, that's fine. Just look who she is with. Let me take the camera. If she's with someone, I'll snap a photo. I listened to the radio while Alan was inside. Lynn was the first to leave the mall, according to my observations. She strolled to her car, carrying only her purse. She sat down and left. Alan came out and waved at me. I drove up to him and he sat. He showed me the photographs he'd taken. She was sitting in the food court with a man I had seen earlier at work. He was attractive. He was well-dressed and his hand appeared to be resting on Lynn. She played with multiple people. We drove home, stopping for a beer on the way. While we were drinking beer, Alan inquired about my plans. I told him I was torn between getting a divorce and causing serious harm to everyone involved. He advised caution. He was correct, of course. At home, Alan went to his place while I went into mine. There were 3 bags on the kitchen table. When I called Lynn, she came out of the bathroom. I was surprised to see you weren't home when I returned. I had no idea you were going anywhere. She appeared worried. Alan and I went to have a beer and watch basketball. It's not basketball season, right? The sports bar plays videotapes of past games. If there are no live games, they will show recorded games. Men, you probably knew who would win if it was all about winning. Nobody would watch anything but the final minutes. We're simply enjoying the game. How was your shopping experience? I purchased something for you. She opened the Brookstone bag and took out 2 blouses. She looked shocked, and I said, I hope it isn't for me. I think they are too small. She discovered an egg-shaped clock inside a Macy's bag. She handed them to me and said she hoped I enjoyed them. I liked it. Her expression remained puzzled. How did items end up in the wrong bags? The egg clock was blue. Lynn, can I have the check? If different colors are available, I believe I would prefer a different watch. She rummaged through the bag and gave me the check. I looked at him and asked, Lynn, can I see the receipts for the rest of the items? For what? Is anything wrong? While she was talking, I removed the receipts from the bags. They revealed that the purchases were made 2 days prior during business hours. Sit down, Lynn. This is serious. Her expression was close to panic. She sat down. I sat down across from her. You are aware that I place a high value on honesty and trust. I want you to tell me when you bought the items on the table. I went shopping today. I didn't say anything. I was waiting. She said nothing else either. Lynn, where have you been today? I visited the mall to do some shopping. Where else have you gone? Only going to the shopping center. You said you'd meet your work friends and go shopping. Call one of these friends. I need to speak with your friend. I will not. She'll assume you don't trust me. Then you don't know her. What is the big deal? It is a matter of trust. So you don't want to confirm who you were with and where you were. You show me a receipt for a watch you purchased 2 days ago and say you bought it today. And you expect me to trust you? Are you saying that I lied to you? She stood up and nearly screamed at me. I remained where I was and spoke calmly. I know you lied to me. I know you have been lying to me for months. I know where you were today and with whom. I have photos of you and these people, and they aren't women, from your work photographs. What are the photos of you leaving the motel room with Willie? She collapsed onto a chair and burst into tears. It's not as you think. I can explain to you, Cam. It'll be a classic. Could you please explain why you were in the motel room with Willie and lied to me? I did not lie to you about that. I asked where you were. You said you stayed in a motel with Willie. No, so you lied. But nothing occurred. We were just talking. He's having problems in his marriage. Do you really think I am that stupid? Why would we meet in a motel room if nothing had happened? Why not tell the truth? Lying makes you feel guilty. I have never had sex with anyone else since we got engaged. I love you just fine. I'd like to talk to Willie when I get home from work on Tuesday night. I'd like him to tell me about your meeting at the motel. Can you schedule this for Tuesday evening? Here? Yes, I can do it. She started to relax. I took the egg-shaped watch and the receipt and returned it. When I returned, Lynn had already hung up. Willie is coming on Tuesday night, she said. Great. I went to the living room and turned on the television. I watched men's movies until nearly 10 p.m. and then went to bed. Lynn was in bed, wearing her standard t-shirt. When I lay down, she kissed me. She didn't kiss me while she had the infection. She claimed it made her want sex, and because of the itching, she did not want to have sex. I said this while my pH was extremely high. I do not want to have sex today. At 8:30, I took the tampon to the doctor's office in Seacrest. Lynn arrived at noon, and we ate lunch at a diner down the street from my office. Lynn said she wasn't feeling well and suggested we cancel the appointment until she felt better. I explained that I still needed to pay, so it was best to arrive 10 minutes before the hour we checked in. The nurse handed Lynn a form to fill out, and as soon as she finished, we were summoned. The doctor led Lynn to the exam room and me to his office. 20 minutes later, they both entered the office, and he sat at his desk. He looked at the form and stated, "I have good news and bad news. Which ones would you like to hear first?" I delivered bad news. Lynn said, "Good news." "Excellent," said Dr. Seacrest, "because good news for Mrs. Peterson means bad news for you, Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Peterson, the good news is that we know what's causing your problem, and the bad news is easy to treat. Mr. Peterson, your wife has had multiple sexual partners which have resulted in an infection. This cannot be." Lynn spoke while you were in the exam room. A nurse collected a sample from Mr. Peterson. We compared it to the sample I obtained from you, and they are not identical. Science does not lie. Someone other than Mr. Peterson has had sex with you over the last 3 days. Lynn began crying. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. After a suitable pause, I inquired, "What is the treatment?" Lynn jerked her head up and stopped crying. She looked at Dr. Seacrest and then at me. The doctor stated that he could give her stronger suppositories, pills, and other treatments that her previous gynecologist recommended. It would also be beneficial if all of her partners wore protection. You were already aware that there is no risk of her becoming pregnant. However, infections are a real problem. "Can I get these prescriptions here in the building?" I asked. "Yes, I can deliver them directly to the pharmacy and you can pick them up along the way. I'd like to see you again in a week to evaluate the progress of your treatment. Please schedule an appointment at the exit." He opened the door for us, shook our hands, and directed us to the front desk. I scheduled a follow-up appointment for the following Monday at 3 p.m. I gently placed my hand on Lynn's back and guided her to the car. She said nothing during the 2-minute walk. I opened the car door for her and asked if she wanted to stay married to me. "Yes. Oh, honey. I'm so. Say nothing. You get into the car and drive home. When you arrive home, you undress, take a shower, and prepare lasagna with a green salad. You will not speak with me unless I ask a question. You will always carry a towel with you because you will be sitting on a towel rather than on our nice furniture. When I get home, you will still be naked. Did you understand?" She nodded. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I helped her get into the car. He turned and returned inside to retrieve her medications. Then I returned to work and began working on a new project. Lynn operates as a business. When I entered the house, I noticed the kitchen was spotless and I could smell the lasagna. There was a nice bottle of wine, plates, and glasses on the table. Lynn entered the kitchen wearing 3-inch heels and thigh-high stockings. She held a small towel in her right hand. I'm surprised. I didn't expect anything sexual. After all, you have an infection, which makes sex impossible. She started talking and then remembered she shouldn't. I went on to say that is no longer the case. Anytime I want sex, I will have it. I believe that your affairs with other men have cost me the opportunity to have sex with you 50 times this year. I want these 50 times. I want dinner right now. Please serve dinner. Dinner was delightful. She stopped on her way home from the doctor to get fresh meat and cheese for the dish. She sat on a towel and ate dinner naked, except for stockings and heels. After I finished, I stood up and entered the living room. She put everything away before following me into the living room. I turned off the television. "Lynn, I'd like you to call Willie and invite him here. I'm going for a walk for a few hours, and I don't want you to be alone. You may sleep with him in the guest bedroom, but not in our bedroom." "No, let's be clear. I want you to sleep with him in the guest room. The nightstand provides protection. Ensure that he uses it. Did you understand?" While nodding, tears streamed down her cheeks. I got up from the couch and went to the back door, called him from the phone in our bedroom. She climbed the stairs, and I opened and closed the back door. I did not leave. I took our digital camera and hid it in the guest bedroom closet. 10 minutes later, I heard a knock on the back door. I overheard Willie exclaim when he saw Lynn, "God, you look incredible." They entered the guest bedroom a minute later, and I opened the closet door and began taking pictures. Willie was easily identified by the tattoo on his back and the long scar on his chest, and I avoided making eye contact with him. I took photos. I hid the camera in the closet and exited, taking a position near the door. He went to the bathroom. Then he saw me and froze. I told Lynn to come here, sit on the floor next to me. She didn't make eye contact with either of us but did what I asked. Willie searched around for his clothes. He did not reach for it, but he did look. I considered knocking out your teeth before Oregon, but I'm sure you'll be relieved to know that I decided not to. In fact, you will enjoy the plan. I want you to sleep with Lynn once a week. You will pay me $500 each time, and you will pay me $500 in cash for her monthly club membership fee. The first missed payment and the photos I have will become public. I'll make sure everyone knows this isn't Helen and Lynn's face isn't visible. The photos of your face are quite good. What say you? This is chanted. His face was flushed, and his demeanor was angry and hostile. He had forgotten that he was standing naked in my house. This is strictly business. You slept with her for months without regard for Helen or me. Now I'm giving you the opportunity to stop hiding, hoping I don't find out. I have a product that you can rent. You now know the price. Since you've already been with her this week, I believe it's only fair that we get her $500 and my $500 by Thursday. The money must be deposited into the bank account I will provide you with. I handed Lynn the card, sealed in a plastic bag, and instructed her to drop it into Willie's hand. She made it. I informed him which bank I had a task for the following day. Determine what to do with the bank account. When I locked the door and went upstairs, Lynn was sitting on a towel at the foot of the bed. I said you could speak freely. Isn't it true that I am now your woman of easy virtue? Did you prefer me as your cuckold? I preferred it when you didn't understand why. You can still have sex. The only real difference is that I get paid for it. Is there something else? Willie may need to take a business trip. You can accompany him. He covers your expenses and contributes $1,000 per day on the days you are absent. Is this true? Her expression suggested she didn't believe I'd let her go. Is this true? Now go to bed and sleep. I laid down, and so did she. I hugged her from behind and fell asleep. When I awoke, she was already dressed for work. My breakfast was on the table. She greeted me with a kiss and said she had considered everything, and my solution to the problem was better than it deserved. She thanked me and kissed me goodbye before leaving for work. 5 minutes later, I left too, at 10. I called Lynn and said something as soon as she answered. Remember when you went shopping? You met a man and spent time with him at the food court. He works at the same company as you. Is he married? Yes. Is he one of your lovers? Yes. Tell them I'm out of town. Would you like to invite him to dinner tonight? Early dinner? Say between 4 and 6. If he asks what's for dinner, say it's you. Are you serious? Very. Be persuasive. Do not let him try dinner. Call me on my cell phone when he tells me what time he'll be arriving. Then go home and dress in the same clothes you did for Willie. Change the bed in the guest bedroom. Yes, sir. Well done. I hung up. I called a technician I knew and asked him to install audio and video recording equipment in our home. I paid him well, and he did an excellent job. The cameras and microphones were well hidden, and the DVD recording equipment was located in the attic. He called me at 3 o'clock to say he was finished. He showed me how to activate the system, and we agreed to meet the next day to make sure everything was working properly. Lynn called at 3:30 p.m. and said she was going home to cook dinner. Mr. Ballman will arrive at 5. I thanked her for the call and dashed home to activate the system. I left before Lynn arrived home. I left 12 roses on the dining table. Alan and I met in a sports bar, watched basketball, and ate dinner. I informed him that we had misinterpreted what we had witnessed. Willie was having marital problems and sought Lynn's assistance. I pushed them apart, and their stories not only matched, but also made sense. At 9, a man from work he was seeing approached her to inquire about another woman from work in whom he was interested. I've returned home. The house was clean, and there was a vase of roses on the dining table. Lynn was naked and lying in bed. She had the nightlight turned on and was reading. She looked up and smiled as I entered the bedroom. Welcome home. Did Mr. Barman enjoy his dinner? I hope his wife didn't count on him today. I do not think he will be able to get up until tomorrow. Did you take the medication after he left? Yes, very good. I need to shower. Perhaps you would be so kind as to wash me and relieve the stress of the day. Yes, if that is what you want. We got into bed, she said. I was waiting for you to come out of the closet or somewhere else. Did he receive a toll-free number today? I smiled. I am the only one who gets free sex from you. When I find out that someone is sleeping with you for free, you and he will both be dead. Clear? Yes, sir. Tomorrow after work, I want you to go shopping. For real? Purchase nice skirts, blouses, and bras. Many pairs of these stockings make for sexy work clothes. Your budget is $1,000. She pressed herself against me and kissed me. Thank you. It can be enjoyable to be a prostitute. It could be enjoyable and beneficial to both of us. My technician and I met at home to see how well the system worked. I watched the DVD, which demonstrated how to create a copy of any recording on the system. After he left, I reviewed Lynn's tapes with Mr. Bowman. I copied a short clip of his face without showing hers. I took a copy with me and reset the system so that pressing a button anywhere in the house activated motion detection and recording. Lynn and I went out to dinner that night, and she dressed in some of her new clothes. She looked very sexy, and we both enjoyed the attention she was receiving at the restaurant. I tested her at home, and her pH was back to 4.3 as it should be. We had sex. Dr. Seacrest tested her for everything, and she was free of everything except the infection caused by her pH. The next morning, I left the office early enough to get to Lynn's office by 10 a.m., her break time. I saw Mr. Bohm walking down the corridor toward the main entrance. He didn't notice me, so I followed him into his office. I noticed a name tag near the door. Mr. Bowman? Yes. Who are you? I shut the door behind me and said, I can either be your best friend or the person who ruins your life. Choose. Can we sit down and figure this out? He pointed to a chair as soon as I sat down. I planted myself beneath the edge of his desk. I have already installed one in Lynn's purse. They were expensive, but the variety was worth it. Lynn's car had a receiver under the seat. Mr. Bowman sat down at his desk. I noticed that his chair was slightly taller than mine, a demonstration of strength. You met with an employee after hours. I am sure your wife and boss will not appreciate the video. Yes, I have. You're talking nonsense. Go away. I stood up and pulled the DVD from my jacket. Here is an example. I have over an hour of video from your meeting. I placed the card next to the DVD and made a cash deposit into this account at Merchant Bank before noon on Friday. The amount in cash is $1,000. You can schedule an appointment once per week. The cost is $500 per session and $500 per month for membership in her club. Your contribution of $1,000 will cover both last night's and this month's dues. My cell phone rang while I was driving back to work. It was Lynn. She was extremely upset. I tried to calm her down and asked what had happened. Mr. Borman summoned me to his office and yelled at me. He threatened to arrest us both if the video surfaced. He said we were going to jail. He threatened that I would be beaten and disfigured. Nick scared the hell out of me. You did everything correctly, dear. There was an insect in his office. His threats have been recorded and will be presented to the police shortly. The only way to avoid this is to make a deposit and attend the next appointment. I do not think he will come. I believe he will fire me. Then 50 copies of the DVD featuring his face will surface, and his days as a leader will be over. The first copy will go to his wife and the second to his parents. Will you protect me? Her voice sounded like that of a terrified girl. Nobody will hurt you. At the office, I mailed the blank disc to Mr. Bachman's address. The letter was addressed to Caroline Borman rather than Mrs. Ted Borman. The post office was located on the same block as my office, so I walked over to mail it. There's no return address. I paid extra for next-day delivery. I invited Lynn to dinner to calm her down. When we arrived home, I checked my account balance. As of last night, the balance was $100. At $11.50, it cost $2,100. Mr. Bowman gave up. I called Lynn's cell phone and told her the money had arrived. Nobody will bother you today. Have a nice lunch. She laughed and thanked me. I went looking for a motorhome. We installed a new calendar program on our home computer. This was Lynn's schedule. The first entry mentioned her next date with Willie. He chose Thursday in the late evening. We set aside times when we needed to do things, and I printed out a weekly schedule with open time slots for Mr. Bowman. I could have given him numerous options, but I decided that 6 free time slots per week would demonstrate that he was not the only one renting my wife's body. I handed Lynn the printout and told him that on Monday, he could see the open time slots and choose one. Inform him that the meeting will take place after the deposit, not before. Call me on my cell phone and tell me which one he chooses. Wow, you're much better at business than I expected. I already thought you were good. Thank you. I suggested that she use a motorhome as her new office, and she agreed. She asked if we could also use it for mini vacations, which I thought was a good idea. We spent Saturday looking at motorhomes throughout the region. We immediately brushed off the large buses. Lynn was afraid of driving them, let alone starting and operating them, when it started to get dark. We were over 60 miles from home. Knowing where we were from, one nice saleswoman suggested we go out to dinner and then return to spend the night in the motorhome we were looking at. She provided us with bed linen and pillows, and we agreed. We drove the RV to the mall, parked away from most other cars, and ate dinner at Outback Steakhouse. Lynn returned to the motorhome and drove around the large parking lot to familiarize herself with the controls. We returned to the dealer before 9 and parked for the night. We closed the curtains and locked the doors. I went outside to see what needed to be done to ensure that no one other than me could watch Lynn and her men. I took notes. Lynn thought this camper could be useful to her. The saleswoman referred to it as a Class C, implying that it was originally a van that was later converted into temporary housing. He was 3 years old. I knew it cost someone around $60,000 in the current economic environment. I was confident that for $19,000 this motorhome would be ours. Lynn desired to test the bed. We did it. I also made notes about this. We started the generator for 1 hour. It was very noisy outside, and unless it was extremely hot, I would not let Lynn run it. It was necessary for the air conditioner to function. The air conditioner worked properly. We also tested the heating system, which worked properly and did not require a generator to run. We went to bed and slept soundly. We were woken up in the morning by a knock at the door. The saleswoman called, "Open up!" I brought us breakfast. "Okay, open the door," I said. I pulled on my shorts. Lynn looked around and couldn't find her shorts, so she just opened the door. Sally, the saleswoman, handed Lynn a bag of food and brought her 3 cups of coffee. She walked up the steps to the motorhome. She closed the door. Lynn took breakfast from the bag and prepared the table for the 3 of us. "I believe you have made yourself at home here. So, what is your solution? Sit down. Let's talk about food." I said, "I'm hungry." Lynn put a small towel on the seat and moved over to make room for Sally or me. I invited Sally to sit wherever she was most comfortable. She hesitated a little when deciding on a location. Is it better if Lynn covered herself? Yes, it will. I've been trying to accept the fact that she's naked since she first opened the door. I'm a little uncomfortable. Lynn put on the t-shirt that I had found. She apologized, saying she had forgotten that most people do not walk around naked at home. Sally sat next to Lynn and the 3 of us ate and chatted. I inquired about jacks to stabilize the motorhome, and Sally quoted a price including installation. I asked about thicker and longer curtains. She quoted us a price and said Lynn or I could select the fabric from the samples they had in their office. We then discussed the price, and I needed to spend $2,800 total, including sales tax. Lynn dressed, and so did I. We met with the financier and were on our way home within 3 hours. Sally called a location where we could park the motorhome. She gave us directions to campgrounds and service centers. We installed and tested new electric jacks, long curtains with no gaps, and a full supply of fluids, including fresh water, propane, and gasoline. Lynn drove the camper, and I followed in our car. I honked at Lynn when I noticed a Walmart ahead of us. Her turn signal turned on, and we were quickly parked in a Walmart parking lot. When we got inside, I mentioned that we needed radios, bed linens, and a mattress. There was a big mattress store next to Walmart. We went inside, and Lynn purchased a new mattress for the RV. They installed it and threw away the camper's foam mattress. As we walked through Walmart, we noticed items we needed for our RV and bought many of them at the warehouse. We packed our belongings and locked the camper. I paid rent for 3 months and was pleased with our accommodations. It wasn't visible from the street. Lynn asked why I didn't throw her out when I discovered she was sleeping with other men. I explained that I'd invested nearly 10 years in our relationship and did not want to throw it away. I spent nearly 10 years hoping she would be happy. I realized she needed more sex than she could get from me in order to be happy. In my opinion, the only way to make her happy is to encourage her in it. Most men would have kicked me out, leaving me alone that night. I am not like most men. Are you the majority of women? What are you asking? What if Sally was a free spirit this morning, stripped naked, and had sex with both of us? Would you be okay with that? 3? Or perhaps I just had sex with her. She looked at the table, but I knew she was just seeing a mental image of me. She remained silent for a while. My thoughts turned to the idea that having sex with her means you don't love me. It's a good thing my head did not stay there. I also thought so. What does he have or do for Lynn that I lack or do not provide? Are you planning to have sex with other women? Yes. She looked into my eyes and softly inquired, Are you there yet? No. But if Sally had removed her clothing, I would have tried. She was, and still is, very attractive. It's my fault, correct? I do not care. Guilt. The point is to sleep with other men. Sex isn't what keeps us together. What keeps us together is our desire to be happy. So I can sleep with whomever I choose, and keep what I have with you, as long as you're okay with it, as I sit with Willie and the others having sex with you. Will you make money from having sex with us? I thought about it. With your help, I believe we can make a lot of money from this. So, to answer your question, yes, I intend to make money through sex. I haven't completely thought it through yet, but I'm working on it. We left one radio in the camper and moved the other to my car. At home, we finished up all of our weekend chores and were in the shower by 10 p.m. Lynn asked me a good question as we lay down in bed. Okay, we own a motorhome. Where do I take him on Thursday to meet Willie? We need a large parking lot that is not overcrowded. Do you know the area around the Wonder Bread factory? Where are the warehouses? Yes, trucks come and go frequently. There aren't many shoppers or mothers with children going to school. You can park in one of their lots, then call Willie and tell him the address. Next week, we will meet in a different location and on a different day. We must change the schedule every week. I do not want the schedule to be too easy to follow. I'll need to drive around the city after work to find suitable parking. I can create a map and tell you where I will be at each meeting. The radios will allow me to keep an eye on you and ensure your safety. We kissed, then went to bed. This morning, I contacted a tech friend from my office and hired him to install cameras in the RV. 3 cameras were sufficient to cover the entire interior. By the end of the day, he had completed the installation and testing process. I left it in the parking lot while I went to work, and when I got back, it took 10 minutes to find one of the cameras. I found the other 2 only after he showed me where they were. I was a little concerned because I had invested nearly $25,000 and received only $2,000. But then I remembered that it took several months after I started my business before I saw any money. Lynn called and told me what time Mr. Bowman had chosen. Wednesday at 1 p.m., he reserved a hotel room half an hour away from their workplace. I asked Lynn to remind him that the deposit was due by noon the day before the appointment. We went to the motorhome in the evening and provided sheets, soap, and other supplies. Lynn did not notice the camera. When we were finished, I asked her to remove her clothes, and we had sex. As we exited the motorhome, I opened the outer storage compartment and removed the DVD from the recorder. "What's this?" she asked. "Insurance. Let's go. When we get home, I'll explain everything." After 20 minutes, I put the DVD into our home theater system and turned on the television. On the screen, I saw myself undressing as Lynn undressed in the motorhome. The audio captured every word, moan, and sigh we exchanged during our sex. This lasted until I turned off the recorder before we left the camper. Now that I understand what you mean by insurance, how do I turn it on and off? There is a power distribution panel near the door. There are a lot of switches and lights for things like the generator, air conditioning, switching from battery to AC. The refrigerator is controlled by a switch labeled REF, Lynn said. Exactly. It activates the recording system just like here in the house. It tracks 8 hours of activity. If you turn it on and then sit down to read a book, it will not record. When you get up, it will turn on and begin recording. When you stop moving, it will wait 5 minutes before turning off. You're not required to turn it off at the end of the date. You do not need to change the DVD or anything. I will take care of everything when I meet Mr. Bowman. I will be in the hotel. There will be no videos. There is a bug in your purse. I can hear everything that happens in the room before you enter. Tell me the room number. If something unexpected occurs, I will enter the room as soon as possible. Everything you say next to your purse is recorded again for insurance purposes. Wow. I'd better be careful what I say about you. Yes, it would not be pleasant, and if I hear something negative about myself while you are not on a date, you will have to pay for it. I understand Willie's need to hear that he is a better lover than me. This is business. She traveled to the hotel with Mr. Bauman. I parked in the hotel's parking lot and listened to them. He was an arrogant man who demanded things rather than asking nicely. He used words and phrases that made me want to beat him, but I realized he was provoking us by inciting Lynn. He wanted us to stop playing so he could stop providing financial support. He did not hit her or force her to say the panicked words she would have used if she needed help. Half an hour after they entered the room, he dressed and left her there. She showered and dressed before departing. She returned to work, and so did I. The following day, she drove to the parking lot, parked her car, and rented a motorhome. She parked in the parking lot of an electronic goods company. People were entering and exiting the lot, but not in large numbers. She parked at the far end of the lot. Willie walked up to the camper after parking across the street for 15 minutes. He knocked once, and the door opened. He stood up. "Lynn is a nice camper. It is yours. It belonged to a friend. I do him a favor, and he occasionally lets me use it. Do you like it?" "Yes." "He has two things that I adore, a bed and a bitch to put on it. Yes, Willie, for the next 2 hours, I am your bitch. Let us do what I enjoy while you do it with me. I know this is bullshit. You are having sex with me for money. You aren't paying me. I've been sleeping with you for several months now because I enjoy it. Your husband likes money, and you two see it this way. You're making a deposit somewhere so you can have sex once a week without any hassle. You don't need to wait for neighborhood parties or for Nick to leave town. Money represents freedom and convenience. I hate having to pay for sex. You do not pay for sex. You're paying for privacy, security, and peace of mind. I sleep with you for free because I enjoy having sex with you. And now I have a new bed, which we haven't used yet. Don't you think we should use it to have some fun?" A minute later, they were already having sex. "What day is next week, Willie?" "Wednesday." "No, that will not do. I have a busy day on Wednesday. How about Tuesday?" I heard the pages turn, and he said it must be in the morning. "How early?" "At 8:30 or 9 o'clock. "Fine. On Tuesday at 8:30. I'll call your phone at 8 and give you the address." I heard the door open and close. I watched Willie cross the street and get in his car. I called Lynn on the radio, and she responded. "Reception. Reception. Is that you, my good friend?" "Yes. Get out and return the motorhome to your friend. I'll get home around 6:30. Oh, honey, don't forget to take your medications. Thank you." I returned to the office and transferred the work I had completed while sitting in the car to the office computer. Lynn returned home, washed the camper's sheets, and cooked dinner. She called me on my phone and said dinner would be served at 6:45. I arrived home in time to wash up and sort through the mail over dinner. She told me this when she returned to work. Mr. Bowman handed her a note that read, "Tuesday from 2:30 to 4:30. Following dinner, I drove to the parking lot and reset the recording system. I marked the DVD with the date and number 1. Willie was now a number. At home, I stored the DVD in a drawer. I realized I'd have a large DVD collection and needed a place to store them. I emptied one drawer on my desk. I decided that once I had 10 DVDs, I would open a bank safe and move them there on a regular basis. Lynn was naked and sitting on the bed when I walked in. She lifted her head and smiled. I love that smile, but I'm curious why it's there. I used to be worried that if you found out, you'd throw me out or beat me up. That worry is now gone. I feel fantastic. Tell me about some of the women you know, please. Looking for a cutie? Yes. She discussed the women she knew. The majority of them weren't opportunities. They never discussed their frustrations with Lynn. However, since starting her new job, she has met one woman who is a real possibility, Mrs. Clark. Mr. Clark, Mr. Bowman's boss, had neglected his wife. Mrs. Clark was the first person she called after moving into her new office. Mrs. Aurora Clark spoke with the woman who had Lynn's phone number almost daily. Her first phone call was an introduction, and Lynn impressed her. She called several times a week. In short, Mr. Clark was more concerned with business than with pleasing his wife. Ask her if she has a computer. If so, advise her to call my mobile number and request an upgrade. Tell her that the first visit is free. This is something I can offer her when we talk. Are you my husband? No, but you can tell I am married. Married women prefer to be involved with someone who is married. I believe he is less likely to want her to leave her husband. Fine. I am expecting her call tomorrow. Perhaps she'll call you tomorrow. Can you check Mr. Clark's schedule without drawing attention? Certainly. Would you like to know when he will be out of town? This will make everything easier. The next day, I received an email containing a photo of Mrs. Aurora Clark and her phone number. She was smiling in the photograph as she stood in the garden with a glass of champagne. She was dressed in a summer dress with a lot of skin and generous cleavage, nice legs, and plenty of tanned skin. The letter stated that she appeared to be around my age. I talked with her. She gave me a photograph to send to you. She wants you to call her before noon today. Offer her a good deal on computer upgrades. I called. The conversation was strictly business, and we scheduled a free estimate. During our conversation, I received a new email from her husband. Schedule. He was flying to Tampa for the weekend. His plane took off in 3 hours. Mrs. Clark, I've canceled an appointment for this evening. If you prefer, I can come and evaluate your computer today. At what time? How about 6? Her plane took off at 16:45. 6 will be sufficient. Will I distract you from your date with your wife or something? No. I am married, but my wife is in San Diego tonight. In fact, she'll be gone until noon tomorrow. Are there other plans? If I weren't dating your computer, I'd be watching professional basketball on television. Are you a fan? Only when I have nothing better to do. She gave me her address, and we ended our conversation. I called Lynn. She invited me tonight. I will not be there when you arrive home from work. I won't be there all night if you're lucky. Do you know what Mr. Clark is worth? He currently serves as the company's executive vice president, without any guesswork. I'd estimate he makes $500,000 per year. Pleasant. I found it using Google. After reviewing 5 different websites, I got a decent picture. He was 50 years old, had spent many years working for Buick, and was now the executive vice president of one of GM's major parts companies. He got his MBA from Yale. He married Aurora the same year he moved from Buick. Her family was extremely wealthy. Old New England money. I went home, showered, shaved, and changed into fresh clothes. I parked a block away before 6 o'clock. At 6, I pressed the button next to the gate. I heard her voice and said hello. I am here to evaluate the computer. She allowed me in. The gate opened and I pulled up to the house. I parked on the side of the house, not in front, as a guest. She opened the side door as I exited the car. I smiled. She wore loose shorts and a bustier top. She was barefoot. Her hair was still slightly damp. We exchanged greetings and she guided me to her computer. We talked while I took the casing off the tower and looked inside. Mr. Clark purchased her a nice machine. I launched it and examined the contents after it had finished loading. He discovered that he had installed 2 separate keystroke monitoring programs. Then I realized no one had ever looked at them. I concluded that he had no idea the monitors were there. I got rid of some things she didn't want or need, which made the car faster. She observed everything I did. Half an hour later, she said, "Talk to me." I told her what I discovered and what I did. We discussed programs for monitoring keystrokes. She did not flinch. "Fine, you're good." Michael had one of his technicians inspect the machine, but he could not find any monitors. "Now, would you like to see my actual computer?" "Yes. You are much smarter than Michael or anyone else knows. One day I'll tell you a story, but not today." She led me to an outbuilding that had once been a stable, possibly a century ago. There were horses present. One room contained tissue boxes and 2 industrial sewing machines. She moved the tissue box and pushed the button. The door opened and we entered a small room. I was thrilled. She had thousands of dollars in high-tech computer equipment. She sat down and asked, "Do you know my husband?" "No, we have never met." "I know a lot. On the phone, you identified yourself as Pete. This is Nick. Your wife works for my husband." "With?" "Yes, ma'am. And as her boss. She slept with him for just over a year. You know everything about it. Fine. You're good. No, you're incredible. Do you understand why I wanted to meet you? For at least 3 reasons. First, use me to earn money. Second, get sex. Third, consider adding me to your stable and earning money by having sex with me. Okay, guilty on all counts. Why am I here? I need you to help me destroy my husband by the end of the year. I want him to be either sitting in an 8-meter cell in a horrible prison or living in a small, filthy studio with rats and cockroaches as neighbors. You don't love him? You both. Mister. Yes. I bombed and drugged your wife while having sex with her before handing her over to my husband. He had sex with her. This was the first major infection she had last year. Her fingers tapped the keyboard and she held her finger over the enter key. I captured it on video. Would you like to take a look? No, I believe you. I wanted to find both men and hurt them. Having sex for fun and profit is one thing. Sex without consent and disregard for someone's health are entirely different. Are you in? Yes. Lynn, too. I know we've kept in touch since she was promoted. She'll be promoted again. Money is good. You do not need to worry about money. We're already wealthy and we're about to make a few million more. I hate to argue, but you're the one who is wealthy. I spent $25,000 setting up our small sex business and have earned less than $8,000 so far. She got up and led me out of the computer room and into the apartment for the next 2 hours. I did everything she requested. When I was tired, we rested on the large bed. Do you have a plan? Yes, but you aren't angry enough yet. He married me to gain access to my finances. He gained access to 1% of my money. He believes that 1% makes him rich. On our wedding day, I discovered that he had sex with 3 of my friends. He gave them $10,000 each on the day of his farewell party at Buick. He had sex with his secretary. He informed his secretary that he would hire her as soon as he found a new job. He did not do it. Instead, he sent her $20,000 in cash and never returned her calls or emails. He is currently in Tampa Bay for a football game. He does not care about the game. He has his eye on a cheerleader, and they are now having dinner. He will have sex with her in an hour, and she will lie to him, telling him he is fine. He's not very good. Why are you still married to him? If I file for divorce, he will be able to take money that doesn't belong to him. It wouldn't hurt me financially, but he'd be able to live comfortably with the money. Dear Nick, what happened? Remind me never to cross your path. If you ever wake up with the sensation of a truck parked on your chest, you've crossed me. I'm hungry. My cook cooked us pork ribs, beans, and cornbread. They're in the oven to keep warm. Let us eat. She escorted me to the main house without dressing. Dinner was amazing. The meat fell off the bones with the slightest touch. Cornbread was made with corn kernels baked inside. She led me back to the computer room and asked, "Let's check on my husband." A few keystrokes and the monitor revealed the interior of his room. He had sex. He is a scumbag. We turned off the screen and I realized she hadn't stopped recording. What shall we do next? I asked. I believe Lynn should assist us. She can ask Carl to invite my husband with them. Carl is not Mr. Bowman's first name. No, he prefers his first name, Bradley. He claims it is the name of a wealthy man. I call him Carl, his middle name. What happens when all 3 of them are together? The paparazzi will discover them. Your wife will be participating in the game. We will set it up so that everyone believes she did not consent to sex. It will occur at work. They will be destroyed, and your wife will earn a lot of money. She will appear on Oprah, Dr. Phil, and Letterman, and be paid handsomely for her story. A poor working woman who was exploited and mistreated by her bosses. Crap. I like it. She pressed a few keys, and the monitor displayed our bedroom. Lynn was lying in bed. Aurora commented, "She's so hot." Neither man can resist. Aurora turned off the monitor, and we returned to the main house, carrying our clothes. We took a shower together before going to bed. When I awoke, Aurora was sitting beside me on the bed. She looked me in the face and asked, "Do you have a cell phone?" "What for?" "Call Lynn. Allow her to go to the IHOP near your home. You'll go after her and bring her here. By the evening, we'll be a trio seeking vengeance and justice." I rolled over to the edge of the bed and discovered my phone in my pants. Lynn picked up the first call. "Hello? Lynn, I love you." "Have you ever met the lady that I work for?" "No." "Then dress and meet me at IHOP. Do not come inside. Just park and get into my car. What's happening? Trust me. Do you want to meet her? Fine. Give me a half hour, as promised." After 30 minutes, she parked at the end of the lot and got into my car. Aurora sat in the back, crouched down. Lynn sat up and saw Aurora. She sat down, closed the door, and said, "Good morning, both of you." I drove away, and Aurora was talking to Lynn at the gate. Aurora handed me the code, and the gate opened. She told me to park at the stables a few hours later. Lynn was still in shock. She agreed to be the victim of 2 men and soon became Aurora's friend. We walked from the computer room to the guest room, and when Lynn entered, she said, "You had sex with her in this room." and Nick plans to have sex with both of us in the same room. Both women awoke before me and began talking about men in general, me in particular, and the two men they were targeting, Carl and her husband Michael. I listened. After a while, Aurora whispered into my ear, "We know you are not sleeping." I kept my eyes closed because you're both so beautiful that looking would distract me. They kissed me back. We ended up eating one more meal and spending the night in the guest room. We decided to release Willie from financial obligations while also ensuring his silence by preserving the DVD. The money we receive from Carl and Michael will compensate for what we lost from Willie. Within a week of returning from Tampa, Aurora asked Michael to hire someone to manage the apartment building she had purchased. It was a small house with only 6 apartments, and she specified how much she wanted to receive in rent per month. He offered to take care of it for her. She told me that if she asked for 2 small apartments, he could get all of the money she needed by renting 5 and keeping 1 as a playroom for Carl and himself. Aurora quickly realized that he would only rent to single women and have sex with them. She hired her sons to pretend to be on the painting crew and install video systems throughout the building. He kept apartment 6 for personal use. He instructed the painting crew to install soundproofing between the 6th and 5th apartments so that the woman in the 5th could not hear what was going on in the 6th. It was 6 weeks after I met Aurora that Lynn was taken into Mr. Baum's apartment in Carl. 4 weeks after meeting Aurora, I met Willie. I followed him to the diner, where he purchased lunch. I sat down with him and his mouth was full of corned beef sandwiches. "Willie, I like you. I will make you an offer. If you like it, you can stop making deposits to both the bank and Lynn. You can also keep everything secret. I'll keep the DVD for 7 years, in case you decide to tell someone about your wrongdoings." He swallowed a bite of his sandwich and inquired, "Are you serious?" I nodded and replied, "I'm serious. The matter is resolved and you are now free. The price is silence. Agree. Is Lynn okay with it? She'll miss having sex with you, but that's fine. Thank you for your concern about her. It'll make her happy. You will not make a move on her if we meet at a neighborhood party or elsewhere. I'll find out and say nothing if you do this. I'll simply send 50 DVDs of you. Understood?" "Yes, I'm safe. And it's over. Have a nice lunch." I left, and he finished the rest of the sandwich. The following week, Lynn had sex with Mr. Borman in his motorhome. Lynn parked near the lake, while Mr. Bauman parked at the dock and walked over. When their activities were completed and Lynn and him were dressed, he asked if she wanted to include anyone else in their activities. She inquired as to whom and was surprised when he replied, "Mr. Michael Clark." She wasn't surprised, but she did appear shocked. They agreed to meet next Wednesday, but Mr. Bowman suggested changing the location to Michael's apartment. He will pick her up at work and return her after the date. Lynn sweetened the deal by informing Mr. Bowman that he would not have to pay next week. It would be free. She didn't ask where the apartment was. Both men felt secure there. They were not. I handed her the handcuffs to put in her purse. She told Aurora and me about the plan. On Monday, I reported to the police. I met with Detective Saunders and told him about my suspicions. My suspicions were limited to Mr. Bowman. I informed Detective Saunders that Mr. Bowman had threatened her job if she didn't have sex with him. Where and when? He claimed I gave him a branded brochure with his photo and a photo of Lynn taken at a party in our neighborhood. He promised to keep an eye out and catch Mr. Bowman the next time Lynn was assaulted. Lynn asked Mr. Bowman at work on Monday if there was anything special Mr. Clark wanted her to wear on Tuesday bomb, and then called Mr. Clark to tell her to wear black lace lingerie, a thong, and a bra. Oh, and stockings, not pantyhose. Mr. Bowman called home to leave a message for Lynn. Your boyfriend suggests you wear a black lace thong, bra, and stockings. I agree. Lynn wore exactly what they requested. Lynn and Mr. Bowman exited the building through the side door at the appointed time and entered his car. As they exited the parking lot, they were followed by a gray Ford. The pursuit ended after a mile when it came across a white van with a plumbing company logo on the side. Mr. Bowman parked right in front of apartment number 6. He walked out, opened the door for Lynn, and supported her with his elbow. With a single knock, the door opened, and Mr. Clark let them in. I can tell you what happened next because Aurora and I were watching from the video room in her stable. Mr. Clark kissed Lynn first, followed by the kiss. She dropped her purse. It opened, and Mr. Baum noticed handcuffs. He took them from her purse and showed them to Mr. Clark. "This could be fun. Do you agree?" Mr. Clark described the woman as having easy virtue. It was a gift. I have never worn them. Lynn spoke the truth. It was a gift from Aurora Clark. Then everything went according to plan. The door to apartment 6 swung open. 3 uniformed police officers and 2 detectives rushed into the room, and one of them began taking photographs. The 2 men were arrested. Lynn was released, examined by 2 paramedics, and transported to a nearby hospital. Aurora phoned her husband from prison. He explained how he had been framed and how, if the case went to trial, he would be able to prove his innocence. He invited her to come and bail him out. She said she was busy and couldn't come right away. Perhaps he should contact his lawyer. She had already called his lawyer and informed him that she would no longer be paying any of her husband's legal bills starting that day. When Michael called a lawyer, he was told that he needed to hire one before they would represent him. Michael screamed and swore at the lawyer, who hung up. When he attempted to pay bail with a credit card, he discovered that the district attorney deemed both men flight risks and convinced the judge to detain them pending trial, without bail. If the lien had been approved, he would have lost his credit, as well as the account balances he thought he had hidden from his wife. I checked our bank account and discovered $100,000 had been deposited. I picked Lynn up from the hospital, and she cried all the way to the car. We drove to her workplace, and she drove home in her car. We had 2 tickets to Los Angeles on our kitchen table. We packed our belongings for the week and departed to the airport. A limousine met our plane in Los Angeles. The driver only knew where to drive us. There's nothing else. There was a beach house in Malibu. He handed us the key and carried our suitcases to the door. Inside, we discovered a typed note. "Enjoy. A few days on the beach. Lynn will not lose her job. Your attorney contacted the company and they know where Carl and Michael spent the night. Fly back in 2 days. Your attorney will meet the flight. We had a great time over the last 2 days and nights. We returned by plane and were met by a limousine driver holding a sign. Our names appeared on the sign. As soon as we approached and announced that they were waiting for us, the photographer took 15 photos of us. We did not watch the news or listen to the radio while we were away. Someone leaked the story to the media. The photographer at the airport was just the beginning. By the time we were halfway home, the phone in the limousine rang, and the driver was directed to the police station. We spent 2 hours with the detectives, Aurora's lawyer, and someone from the district attorney's office. We were on our way home again. There was no trial. The district attorney persuaded Carl, Michael, and their lawyer that they would be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. They accepted the deal and received 15 to 25 years. We all got what we wanted. Aurora got rid of her husband but kept her money. Lynn met a new lover and discovered many more. She realized she liked women, too. I earned a steady income working for Aurora, lived with Aurora and Lynn, 2 more than willing lovers, and took wonderful vacations with both of them. Oh, Aurora gave me the apartment building. This introduces a new story. Was it vengeance or justice for the boys? Some might argue that I should have thrown Lynn out into the street and moved on. When I look back on my life, I consider myself fortunate to have survived. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, leave a comment below with your thoughts on what happened.